Welcome everyone to the regular meeting for the District of Squamish for Tuesday, October 5th. We're meeting tonight on the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation, Squamish, We've Alaska, Homish, Okmel. We have a busy agenda, so we'd like to get the agenda adopted quickly. Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Herford. Any opposed? Motion carries. Any notice of motion, Council? Seeing none, we will move on. We have several delegations and proclamations today. So the first is a proclamation request for World Polio Day on October 24th. And Brian Finley, is he here? He is here. All right. Go ahead, Mr. Finley. Welcome.
Hi, I'm just sorting out. Am I on the video?
Yes, you are. We can see you and we can hear you. Now you seem to be muted now, Mr. Finley. Can you unmute yourself?
Okay, I'll just hold the space bar down. I'm okay now?
Yes.
I've joined you several times over the last few years and talking about polio and giving you an update on Rotary's desire to eradicate polio worldwide. So once again on Sunday, October 24th will be World Polio Day around the world, a day for us to take a snapshot of where we've been, where we are, looking forward to the future, and to thank all the workers and the health workers and the frontline workers who are working so hard to eradicate polio worldwide. So over the last year, it's been a period of setbacks, but one of also of great progress. I just want to update you with a few of the highlights that have happened. Last March 2020, as you all know, the pandemic hit worldwide. So in that case, the Global Eradication Program, Polio, decided to devote all the assets of the Polio Eradication Program to the fight against COVID. And that was the logistics network, the cold chain, the testing, the laboratories, but most important, all the volunteers and frontline workers who were working on polio eradication were now devoted to tracking down and try to eliminate the COVID virus, just as we had been doing with the polio virus. But during the same time, in August, we saw the continent of Africa was declared polio-free of the wild polio virus. After 3 years of no cases, a country or an area, World Health Organization or area is declared polio-free, and that happened in August. And that culminated a program started by Nelson Mandela in 1996 to kick polio out of Africa, and that was finally achieved. So some success, some setbacks, but now the polio program has restarted, and we've got to double our efforts to make sure that we catch up and make sure we vaccinate all those missed children with the polio vaccine. But I have some really great news that during 2021, so far, there's only been 2 cases of the wild polio virus in the world. One in Pakistan and one in Afghanistan. And both of those occurred in January of 2021. So we've gone almost 9 months now without a detected case of wild polio in the world. So that gives us hope that we may actually be seeing the finish line of this 40-year challenge to eradicate polio. So I'm asking tonight for the District of Squamish to join Rotary and other worldwide organizations and proclaim October 24th to be World Polio Day in the District of Squamish. So if there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer that. Otherwise, I thank you very much for your attention and hope that we can work together to end polio.
Thank you, Mr. Finley. It's incredible work that's been done to get us to this point, and hopefully, you know, in a few years, that proclamation can be World Polio Eradication Day.
Oh, we hope
We
so.
could celebrate that. But Councillor, are there any questions for Mr. Finley or comments? All right. You're getting off easy tonight, Mr. Finley.
Yes, well, I see quite a few of my friends or councillors in the street and talk to them, so try to update them all the time.
Wonderful. Council, would someone like to move the motion? That's moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Pettengill. Councillor French?
Yeah, thanks. I just want to acknowledge that I don't know this for sure, but I would suspect that the work done by the folks who have been so involved in the eradication of polio likely played a pretty important role in our current handling of getting vaccinations around the world for COVID-19. There must be a correlation there, learnings and history and knowledge. And it's great that the Rotary organization has been historically involved in this project and done such great work. So I support this motion and I support the work being done by the club. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Seeing no other hands, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for your good work, Mr. Finley, and for keeping us updated.
Thank you very much, everyone.
All right. Next is a proclamation request for Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Day on October 15th, 2021. And Belinda Grant, I believe, is not with us. Yes, she is. Welcome, Ms. Grant. If you'd like to say a few words.
And have it proclaimed. And I guess most of you know my story. In 2015, we lost our little girl, Elodie. Never gets easier, I can tell you that. Our little girl, Elodie, to stillbirth. And, you know, sadly, just so many people in our community face this every day. And it's, I don't know, when, you know, it's like when you have a white car and you suddenly see lots of white cars. I don't know if it's kind of like that, but it's really hit Squamish. And I think in recent years, talking to a lot of doctors and stuff, we have lots of people who suffer miscarriage and stillbirth and early infant loss. And it's very challenging. And I think as a tight community that we are, it's important that we recognize this day. And so on this day, again, this year, we're going to be holding the Wave of Light ceremony, which is a global ceremony that takes place at 7 o'clock. There is a candle that you light in remembrance for those that were taken from us too soon. But, you know, every year when I have to kind of come and ask this, you know, it is very difficult. And I'm happy to do it, and I'll continue to do it every year if I have to. But I would also ask that if it is possible, that council can just, for the future moving forward, proclaim that October 15th is known as Pregnancy and Infant Loss Day in Squamish. So I don't know if that's possible, but that's what I'm asking of council today.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. And I can appreciate that it's not easy to come and ask every year, but I'm certainly glad that you've raised our community's awareness of this reality for families and the losses that they experience. So I'm very appreciative of that. So just a question through to Ms. Arthurs. We can't tie the hands of future councils, but we could certainly declare this day during our term. Could we not, for this year and next year?
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. You can proclaim, we have done that in the past where we've had this day here forward is, and it's been at the will of the council that's sitting.
Okay, so we do have that ability then. So Council, Ms. Grant's asking if we would proclaim from this day forward that we recognize annually October 15th as Infant Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Day. Councilor Herford? He's moving that. Seconded by Councilor Race. Any comments? Councilor Herford?
Thank you. And thank you for coming to speak with us about this issue. And we can tell that it's not not easy. And I think it is absolutely appropriate that we declare this from here forward, October 15th, to be I want to get the wording correctly, the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Day. So thank you for bringing it to our attention, and thank you for the extra ask of from here forward. Really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you, Council.
All
Appreciate
right,
your
I'll
time
call.
tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Grant.
Thank you for your time.
All right. We have another proclamation request, this time Economic Abuse Awareness Day for November 26th. This is being brought forward from Canadian Center for Women's Empowerment. I think there's a representative from that organization. Terry?
Mayor Elliott, we do have a representative online. However, they've joined incorrectly and I cannot promote them to panelists at this time.
Ooh. Mesi, if you can hear me, what are the instructions, Terry, that they need?
If you could please re-log in and don't press the blue join by browser button, just press the join here button. And then we'll promote you as soon as we see you again. Mayor Elliott, we do have the next delegation online if you'd like to carry on, and we can come back to Mesi.
Thank you. That would be great. So next up, while we wait for that person to get logged in correctly, we have a delegation and a letter of support request from Quest University, and joined by President George Iwana, Bernard Nadeau, the interim VP Finance and Operations, and Jeff Warren, VP Academic.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Elliott, councillors. Good evening. I'm sharing the microphone this evening with Dr. Jeff Warren, our VP Academic, and I just wanted to start by saying how appreciative we are, and I speak on behalf of the university and the board, of the continuing and sustained support we receive from the District of Squamish throughout our history. And it's as true today as it has ever been. Your support in all we aspire to do is deeply appreciated. We don't take it for granted, and how thankful we are for that. I'll hand it now over to Jeff Warren.
All right. So the context here of what we're asking is, as you know, that Quest operates under the Sea to Sky University Act, which is a provincial act of legislature. And that act states that all property owned by the university and used for educational purposes is exempt from taxation. So in the past, we've not paid property tax because we've owned our land. Public universities, say the universities that are under the Universities Act, or other private not-for-profit degree granting universities, have a tax exemption provision that's a little bit wider, that applies to all land used for educational purposes, whether it's owned or whether it's leased. So the problem that Quest now faces is that during our financial restructuring last year, Quest sold our land and we entered into a long-term lease of the campus lands. So because the Sea to Sky University Act is more limited than the parallel acts for public universities or other not-for-profit degree granting universities, Quest is now subject to property taxation. And so what we are petitioning to do is make a two-word change to the Sea to Sky University Act that says that land owned or leased by the university is exempt from taxation. So the materials we submitted provide the wording, context, and precedent for this that reflects what I explained. I'd just like to also note that this would only apply to land that Quest leases for educational purposes. So if for some reason in the future Quest is not on the current land that we're on or not used for educational purposes, it would be subject to taxation. So what we're requesting here is the support from council for this change. To make a change like this to a provincial legislative act, this needs to go to the province, and this will go to legislature either in fall or early spring.
Thank you, Dr. Warren. Council, do you have any questions for staff or for delegation? I've got Councilor Pettengill and then Councilor French.
Thanks. I'm just wondering the sort of line between the not-for-profit and the for-profit that the land is leased from. Am I correct in the for-profit Prima Corps has seats on Quest board, and I'm wondering how many seats?
So Quest is governed by the Sea to Sky University Act. The Sea to Sky University Act says that it's a board-governed institution. And so all board members, their fiduciary responsibility is to Quest. There was a one-time provision in our restructuring where we had a turnover of board members. So all of our board members right now, none of our board members, none of our voting board members work for Prima Corp, and their fiduciary responsibility is, as per the Sea to Sky University Act, to Quest University, the board governed not-for-profit.
May I add to that answer? Our board chair, what happened during the transition was 3 members from our past board continued to the current board. And so those are 3 members you may know. They're on our website. Sheila Biggers, Chief Dale, and our alumni representative, Anna Lipman. 2 members were added as a result of the partnership. Senator Yona Martin, Senator with our government, of course, and Art Wilms, well known for his leadership of West Coast Energy and the Vancouver Symphony Foundation. And so this is the composition of the current board. Most recently, we have asked and obtained membership from a financial expert to very much needed capacity on our board. So those are some specifics, but I think your question, you were also perhaps wondering about the balance. Who's new, who came over with the transition.
And all those board members were added as to the existing bylaws of the board of governors.
Voted, and even the chair was voted in.
Councilor French.
Thank you for bringing this request. As council considers the request, and there's some nervousness in the community about the long-term future of the institution. I'm wondering if you could share some reassuring words about the long-term future for Quest as a not-for-profit and as a degree granting institution.
Yeah, so, well, first off, what we're asking for would only pertain to Quest running for educational purposes. Our mission, vision, values of the institution remains the same as it's always been, and our single degree, our Bachelor of Arts and Sciences, remains the centerpiece of what we do. We are, while our student numbers are smaller than they have been in the past, we are looking to rebuild our student numbers and to continue with the same high educational quality that we've always had. George, if you want to add to that.
I would, to Councillor French's excellent question. Last week, I spoke at an international conference for a think tank outside of Vienna, Austria. It was along with senior executives from Coursera and EDUCAUSE. Quest was the only university invited, and the theme was innovative education. Our reputation persists out there as a creative and innovative educational institution, and we have full intentions to continuing as a secular, not-for-profit, board-governed institution. I had a conversation yesterday with the head of Primacorp and their head of recruiting. And under Jeff's leadership, we have a substantial document of ancillary and other programs that you will see us unfold and initiate in the coming days and weeks. And these have to do with a number of revenue generating programs, 2-year affiliate degree programs, and concerning for example, I pick one example, a 2-year affiliate degree program that we could stimulate revenue streams from students around the world. In our ideal world, we would take the first 2 years of Quest and offer that. Others might think that a diluted, easy program to attract international students to such a program might be that of the day. I was told in no uncertain terms by the leadership at Primacorp, including the president and CEO, that it's the highest quality of Quest programming that they wish to see in anything that's added on like an ancillary program of an affiliate degree. It's maintaining that quality, and that it's that quality that they want to ramp up the rest of their programs too. I was delightfully encouraged by this, and I thank the board and people like Jeff for putting these things forward. But those again are some specific examples of things that we hope to, we not hope, but we will do to try and increase our student numbers and revenue. So I'm optimistic about the future, not only financially sustained as a corporate institution, but also that we will not waver from our principles of being that secular, not-for-profit, board-governed institution of higher education.
Might I add, Councillor French, I've been working lately with a couple of partnerships. One is liberal arts institutions across the Pacific Rim. And these are like top level quality programs from China to the West Coast of the US, and other schools across North America, or across the world, that offer the block like us. And it's so important we need to regrow, and so we need financial sustainability, but we need financial sustainability as we regrow that keeps the quality of education, that keeps the ethos of this place unchanged. And I think that that's the thing that will also help us continue to be a good citizen in this town.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands. Oh, Councilor Gangwell.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm still, I guess, trying to understand fully the relationship between Primacorp and Quest. And in the comments there about sort of the president of Primacorp's vision for Quest, I'm just wondering what role he has, or his vision has, if Quest is just leasing property from Primacorp. And so I'm just trying to understand that relationship.
Yeah, I can explain. We have a threefold relationship with them. On the one hand, they own the land, and we have a long-term lease from them for the land. On the other hand, they are right now providing our runway funding. So as we went through our financial crisis and we erased our debt, but we have operational deficits at this point as we regrow. And so they are providing that financing that through a line of credit. Also, there are certain and then on the third part is that there's a set of services that they are the service providers for. So our recruiting and marketing divisions are essentially outsourced to them. So they respond and need to report to an answer to our board, but we have agreed that they lead on those services.
Yeah, and the Ministry of Advanced Education is keeping a close eye on these matters because the kind of concerns that you're expressing have been theirs as well. So they want to ensure that our faculty and Quest members are making the definitive decisions about admissions to the university and to the program. That marketing materials and other things, the way we're portrayed and the content out there that portrays Quest to the world is vetted. And final decision is mine and the executive to make it Quest before anything gets released. So the kind of banners and the branding that you'll see around town and so forth, if you've been up for movie night and things like that, have to go through the scrutiny of the executive. And even things like that are being watched by the ministry to ensure that your concerns are met, which they have articulated as well. But thank you for the question. It's a good one.
So in the organizational structure, we've still followed the Sea to Sky University Act, where the board has all final decision on anything to do with the university, full governance and fiduciary responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And I understand that our MLA, Sturdy, would be stewarding this legislation through. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes. Yes.
All right, council. So Quest is looking for a letter of support from our council to the Ministry of Advanced Education to support the wording change in the Sea to Sky Act. Is there someone that would like to move that? It's moved by Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Any further comments? Seeing none, Councillor Pett.
I think, from my perspective, it would be important to make sure that any letter that comes from us emphasizes the importance of it being a not-for-profit university
Yes.
and agree granting not-for-profit. Very explicit on that.
Yes.
Happy to. Sorry, there's a motion on the floor, Dr. Iwana, so I can't let you in. Sorry. But I think this is a question that I have discussed with President Iwana many times, discussed with advanced education, and so I'm happy to include that as part of the letter because I think that is the aim of Quest University. Any other comments? Councillor French, and then Councillor Anderson.
Speaking in support of the motion, I completely agree with Councillor Pettingill. That wording is important to me as well, and many of the people that I'm in contact with regularly who have benefited from Quest existing in our community and see the potential that the institution continues to provide our community. And not-for-profit, secular, degree granting, these are important aspects of the institution for our community. I support the motion. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I'm also speaking in favor of the motion. The last 20 years have been a journey and an ongoing collaboration between the municipality and Quest University. I myself and many in the community and many of my colleagues here have been involved with all kinds of diverse collaborations with the students and faculty of Quest. And I think it is really the responsible thing on our part for the District of Squamish at this time to do what we can to assist to preserve options for continuing quality programming at Quest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming this evening. Certainly will speak in support of the motion and look forward to getting that letter off to the ministry. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Murray, do we have Mesi back on the line?
We do, Mayor Elliott. Mesi is joining us by phone and trying to get her on board here. Mesi, are you there?
Yes, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. And Mesi, I don't want to attempt your last name for fear of saying it really terribly. So maybe if you could introduce yourself.
Sure, yeah, thank you so much. And I'm so sorry about the technology. I don't know, I have to turn on actually my computer. Just give me 1 second. Yeah, so can you hear me now, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Mesret. My last name is Haileysus. I know it's very hard to pronounce. So I'm a survivor of domestic violence and economic abuse. And also I'm the founder of the Canadian Center for Women Empowerment. We are located on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation, which is in Ottawa. So we are a national organization specifically addressing economic and financial abuse in the context of domestic violence through policy change, awareness, research, and economic empowerment. So we are the only Canadian organization in Canada addressing right now through policy change and awareness. So we try to actually reflect what economic abuse is. Maybe you might had a chance to review. So economic abuse is a hidden, underreported, and underrecognized form of violence, which is 95% of women who experience domestic violence also have, economic abuse. Unfortunately, in Canada, as you know, coercive control is not, really criminalized. So because of that, many women are left behind. So as I mentioned earlier, the reason we are going to even address this issue is we have seen that there is a huge gap in Canada, especially province like Vancouver, British Columbia, Ontario, Alberta, and few provinces also, they don't have any clear program to support victims of financial and economic abuse in the context of domestic violence. And then also we found that women who experience even economic abuse 5 times more likely experience physical and other form of abuse. And also we found that it's a critical barrier for a woman to leave abusive relationship. So far in 2021, the federal government, as you know, committed to create a national action plan to address gender-based violence. So we include this issue, and right now economic abuse first time included in the Canadian government, national strategic plan. So our challenge is financial institutions like banks, credit collectors, utility companies, essential service workers, they don't have family violence programs, so that really affect women. So, and also we found that there is a huge gap in terms of raising awareness, specifically the economic aspect of violence. So, so far we reached out more than 20,000 women across Canada. We also advocate to include this issue on the National Action Plan. We are advocating right now to include and to introduce a family violence program in Canada among Canadian banks and credit collectors. And also we have a national task force. So the national task force are included, people from the BC, like Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation, and also the Praise Society in Vancouver, also part of our, national task force. We did this campaign last year as well, and then we reached out City of Victoria, City of Vancouver, and almost like 22 cities across Canada. They proclaimed November 26th at the National Day of Economic Abuse. So today I would like to ask your city to recognize this issue, because one of our plans is to support your community, especially in British Columbia, because we have seen that this issue is not clearly addressed through policy. And plus, survivors of domestic and financial abuse, there is no any program in the financial institution. Even women, they don't know the danger signs, and plus they don't know even on how they could protect their assets. They could also rebuild their finance, after they leave that relationship. So right now, even we are working with many shelters across Canada. We are producing many education material. We are also developing a first digital platform for a woman to help her to check her finance, and plus that tool also helps her to leave that abusive relationship safely. So this is all about our work, and I'm happy to be here and to share about these things. As a survivor, as a mother, and also as part of the marginalized community, I have seen that this issue affected specifically Black Indigenous women across Canada. Thank you so much for here listening my, pitch, and I hope you will give me the proclamation, because it's a very good opportunity for you as well to work with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Haileysus. It's really great that you could join us from Ottawa and speak to us about this sort of underreported and issue. I'm just going to ask council if they have any questions for you. I don't see any. So council, the motion is that the district proclaim November 26th as Economic Abuse Awareness Day. That is moved by Councillor Pettengill, seconded by Councillor Race. Any comments? I'll just say, Ms. Haileysus, thank you for speaking on behalf of your organization and also on behalf of survivors. And we know domestic abuse has increased as part of the pandemic. And this is another aspect of it that people need to be aware of. And I really appreciate your efforts for bringing this to our attention and more broadly to our country's attention.
Okay, thank you so much.
I'll call the question, council. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a good night. Bye.
All right. Just move on to item 5 quickly, consideration of unscheduled public attendance. So this is anyone who believes they have an issue that cannot wait for 2 weeks to our next regular business meeting. To our operators to see if there's anyone online that has raised their hand.
Mayor Elliott, no one has raised their hand.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 6. We do have a public hearing this evening. This is the District of Squamish Official Community Plan Bylaw Amendment Bylaw Wildfire Development Permit Area 2809-2021. And I will turn it over to planning.
Thanks very much, Mayor Elliott. I would request the presenter ball and I'll get a short presentation queued up.
No, I just realized I've got to read my opening statement here. Hold on. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the Local Government Act requirements to allow the public to present and to provide submissions to council respecting the proposed bylaw, which I just mentioned. This is our OCP bylaw amendment 2809-2021 for wildfire development permit area. Everyone present will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or provide a written submission. We want to ensure that no one is discouraged or prevented from making their views known, whether speaking in favor or against the proposed OCP amendment bylaw. Please ensure that your remarks are relevant to matters contained in this bylaw. Please note that the public hearing is not an opportunity for members of the public to have their questions answered by staff or by council. Any questions or points of clarification can be directed to staff by contacting the planning department. Please note that this public hearing is being recorded and web streamed live, and the recording will be posted to the district's website. Members of council may ask clarifying questions following presentations. The council is here to listen and will not debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with the public or each other during the public hearing. Up to and as part of this hearing, the public has had the opportunity to make submissions to council. If any submissions were received, they are available for review and comment and have been included as part of staff report. Any submissions received after the agenda was published have been added to the electronic agenda and to the electronic public hearing package available on the district's website. Any submissions made during the hearing can be reviewed during the hearing by viewing the electronic agenda. Submissions will be uploaded by staff as they are received. I'll now ask the planning department to outline the bylaw and what it is proposing. Over to you, Ms. Phillip.
Thanks very much. I'll get the presentation started here. Everybody see that?
Yeah, we can, but I like the picture of your dog.
Thanks. All right.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and members of the public joining us. My name is Asia Philp, and with me is Matt Gunn. We're both planners in the district's community planning department, and we're here to present on the wildfire development permit area for tonight's public hearing. We'll present information on the District of Squamish Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw to add a wildfire development permit area into the official community plan. We'll also present information on the proposed wildfire landscaping management bylaw, which is a new bylaw that regulates landscaping on private properties. Taken together, these wildfire regulations are intended to reduce the risk to our community from wildfire hazard. Note that the public hearing tonight is for the official community plan amendment for the wildfire DPA, but the wildfire landscaping management bylaw is an important component of the overall wildfire regulations, and we'd like to include this for the public's information. The district is bringing forward wildfire regulations because many of our neighborhoods are located close to forested areas. The wildfire risk goes up when development is located next to forests, and this is also intensified by our strong summer winds that can spread fire embers across large distances. Wildfire risk is also likely to increase over time as we continue to develop and push further into our forested areas and as climate change leads to more frequent extreme weather events. These risks are recognized and called out in our official community plan and our community wildfire protection plan, which both recommend development of wildfire hazard regulations as a near-term priority. The wildfire development permit area identifies where a set of wildfire guidelines would apply to new development. Two areas have been created: a primary hazard area that is at a higher wildfire risk, this is shown here in red, and a secondary hazard area that is at a lower risk, and this is shown as the yellow bits. Development occurring within the wildfire development permit area would need to meet a set of guidelines based on the National Fire Smart program that specify building materials and methods that reduce building vulnerability to wildfire. The first key element of the development permit area guidelines is fire-resistant roofing materials. The second is fire-resistant building components, which are listed here. The third focus is on landscaping adjacent to buildings. And the last element applies Fire Smart best practices to subdivision design, which includes road system access and evacuation routes. The wildfire development permit area does not apply to every type of development. This table summarizes when and where it applies. Generally, the small subdivisions, so less than 3 lots, would be exempt with the registration of a wildfire covenant on the lots. Larger subdivisions would be required to go through the development permit process. Single-family homes and duplexes are exempt if fire-resistant roofing is used. Multifamily, mixed-use, commercial, and industrial developments would be required to get a wildfire development permit. So I'll now pass the ball to Matt Gunn, and he'll walk us through the wildfire landscaping management bylaw.
Thank you, Asia. So as Asia mentioned, this bylaw is not under consideration tonight, but it is a key part of these regulations. The intent of the landscaping bylaw is to help protect properties from wildfire hazards that aren't captured by the DPA, such as established single-family areas, by regulating the landscaping surrounding buildings to ensure that Squamish will meet Fire Smart guidelines over time. A few key elements of the bylaw are to regulate landscaping, new plantings in particular, and some maintenance of existing plantings, and that's in particular to existing planting that may grow and expand over time into areas where it might become a problem. It prohibits new cedars, junipers, and junipers, and yews from being planted. Those are identified by our Fire Smart expert who worked on this project with us as really hazardous plants that we just don't think are appropriate within the priority 1 area in the community. So that's within 10 meters of buildings. And then separation between fire-prone plants and buildings. That's a real key factor to prevent the spread of fire from fire that's occurring on landscaping onto structures, which we want to protect. So next slide. Implementation of the wildfire regulations will focus heavily on education rather than enforcement. We're really going after voluntary compliance. The intent is to raise awareness across the community about how we can collectively evolve our community over decades to become more resilient to wildfire threats. Our enforcement is only intended to occur in specific situations when we've exhausted our education options, and it's not intended in the initial years following adoption. Education will piggyback on our current Fire Smart education program, and examples include our recent participation in the Fire Smart workshop, and also including wildfire regulations in the district's e-newsletters once adopted. Slide. Actually, let's skip the slide. So at this point, we just want to talk about a few scenarios that the public may encounter to help kind of explain how these regulations will play out. Here in the image is an example of a Squamish house with a line of fire-prone cedars near the house. That line of fire-prone cedars is kind of an example of things that we want to not encourage, or we really don't want to see happening, because that could light up, create a lot of heat, and that could affect the house over time. So a few questions that might come up. One, scenario one, the resident here might ask, will I need to remove these cedars? And the answer is no. Residents don't have to remove any existing landscaping that's under the proposed bylaw. Any landscaping that is existing when the proposed bylaw comes into place. Landscaping that exists at the time the bylaw is adopted can remain because it is permitted indefinitely under the Local Government Act under non-conforming status. And also, for, if there's any landowners that are kind of concerned that the district may change its policy on that, and that might become a problem over time, that's not in fact an issue. It's a provincial legislation that provides protection to anything that exists legally when a bylaw is adopted. We can't change that as a local government, and so isn't any kind of concern that is warranted about future enforcement and over landscaping that's existing. That will be permitted over time. Next slide, scenario two. Another question might be, can a new cedar hedge be planted? And no, as mentioned earlier, under the proposed landscaping bylaw, you can't plant new cedars within 10 meters of home, nor can you plant fire-prone trees within 6 meters of each other. So for those two reasons, cedar hedges are not going to be permitted within that priority 1 zone within 10 meters of a home. However, there are many alternatives identified in a document the district had created, the Wildfire DPA compliant hedge alternatives. You can see an image there of it. And some of those options include California lilac, strawberry tree, glossy abelia, Fraser Photinia. Next slide, we've got a few more of them. Boxwood and firethorn are other options. There's 2 more. I'm not going to embarrass myself by trying to pronounce and butchering the pronunciation, but they're easy to find in our hedge document at squamish.ca/wildfire. So we've got a great document that really will help people understand the options, which are reasonable options. People want to be able to create privacy around the home, and it's possible. The cedar is not the only option. It's a dangerous option. So we've got better options that people can use. And in creating this document, we ensure that these plants are compliant with our wildlife attractant bylaw. So it's a good fit for our community. And then let's go to the next slide, which is our third scenario. You'll have to click it twice to get the animation. I should have done that animation, but anyway. Okay, so scenario 3, can I replace a cedar in my hedge if it dies? This is a kind of a question that someone might be concerned about because they want to maintain an aesthetic. And the answer here is no. If that hedge is within 10 meters of the house, that priority 1 zone, you're not allowed to plant a new cedar. And so, that is an implication. However, there are many alternative plants that can be substituted. And we've got these identified in this District of Squamish document on Fire Smart Landscaping, again produced in concert with the wildlife staff here that helped us ensure that it complied with our wildlife attractant bylaw. And it's a list of appropriate shrubs and trees that can be used to replace existing vegetation that dies, or new plants that could be used. Again, this list can be found at squamish.ca/wildfire. So, there will be an awkward period if people are trying to replace plants that die in a cedar hedge, but I think these are some of the changes that we're going to have to accept if we do want to transition from our current state, which does have a lot of hazardous situations in landscaping, to a more resilient state where we are less vulnerable to nearby interface fires. I'll turn it back over to Asia.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, on the building side, I'm going to run through a couple scenarios for building new single-family homes. So in the first scenario, we have a home being built in an existing established neighborhood. No wildfire development permit would be required to build or renovate as long as Class A or B fire-resistant roofing is used. So this could be any number of fire-resistant materials, which include asphalt shingles, metal roofing, concrete or clay tiles. So essentially, cedar and wood shingles are not permitted for new roofs or when replacing your roof. In the second scenario, a new home is being built in a newly created subdivision, and through the subdivision process, we've issued a wildfire development permit and we've registered wildfire covenant on the title of each lot. So there's a wildfire covenant, and it requires the new home to be built not only with fire-resistant roofing, but for the primary wildfire hazard areas. So those were the red areas on the map. The new home must also be built with fire-resistant cladding, decks, doors, and windows, as well as requiring that eaves and soffits be closed, vents and gutters are screened, and this is to prevent flame or ember penetration and ignition of the home. So when someone comes in to apply for a building permit for a new home, our building department, plan checkers, and our inspectors would review applications for compliance with these wildfire requirements. And the last scenario involves properties adjacent to watercourses. So the vegetated area between the upland and a watercourse is called a riparian area. And the province has legislation which is administered by local governments to protect these areas. The province calls these riparian areas Streamside Protection and Enhancement Areas, or SPEAs for short. The SPEA area between a creek and a home is what's shown in green in these graphics. So for any wildfire-related vegetation or tree maintenance activities that are going to take place close to a watercourse, the key takeaway here is that the provincial riparian area protection regulations take precedence over our local wildfire regulations. So if the SPEA is located within 10 meters of a building, the wildfire development permit area and wildfire landscaping maintenance bylaw would only apply to the area between the building and the SPEA, not in the SPEA. So this area that you can do vegetation management is outlined by the red dashed rectangle here. No vegetation management can occur in the SPEA unless you hire a qualified environmental professional. We call these QEPs for short. If they've reviewed and recommended how to proceed and the work's consistent with the province's riparian regulations, then you can do works within the SPEA area. So just quickly to touch on public engagement, it included 2 virtual open houses and a survey held over November 2020. The DPA guidelines were presented to the advisory design panel in February of this year. The local development community was presented to in March of this year, and the guidelines were referred to the Squamish Nation and Tsleil-Waututh Nation. Engagement for the wildfire landscaping management bylaw involved a stakeholder meeting conducted via a neighborhood walkthrough with district staff, local environmental and arborist consultants, and this occurred in June this year. The landscaping bylaw was also sent out to all of local landscapers, arborists, landscape suppliers, and contractors in August. The district's wildfire hazard regulations project page on our website has been kept updated through the life of the project. We've received 1 public comment following initial readings of the wildfire regulations, and this comment voiced concerns about the impacts of the landscaping management bylaw on homeowners' rights to use and enjoy the property as they see fit. So that wraps up our presentation tonight. I'll pass it back to Mayor and Council for questions or comments.
Thank you. Please note that there is limited in-person participation for public hearings available at Municipal Hall in Council Chambers. Details to participate via telephone or electronically via WebEx are displayed soon on the screen for those who have logged in from your computer or watching the live stream of the meeting. Instructions are also on our website. In order to get on the speakers list, if you're on the telephone, please raise your hand by dialing *3, or if you're on WebEx on computer or cell phone app by opening the participant panel and clicking on the hand icon. Please note that there will be a moderator who will communicate with speakers. When it's your turn to speak, you will receive a voice prompt via telephone or a dialog box if you're on WebEx. Please remember to put your hand down after you have finished speaking, so that's *3 again on your phone. or clicking on the hand icon on WebEx. Please commence your remarks by clearly stating your name, address, or neighborhood. Please note that speakers will be given 5 minutes to address council in order that everyone has an opportunity to speak. If you've already spoken and then wish to speak again to provide more or new comments, please raise your hand once again. Once I've indicated that speakers will be offered additional speaking opportunities. So while we're waiting for members of the public to decide whether they're going to ask questions, I'll just go to council quickly and see if anyone here has any clarifying questions for staff. Councilor Pettengill?
Yes, thank you. Just trying to understand the riparian. I understand our typical riparian setback, or I guess provincial, is 30 meters from a water course. So if you have that 30-meter space, it didn't sound like, I guess intuitively, I would expect then you'd need another 10 meters for the wildfire DPA. So you'd have to be effectively 40 meters from the water. But I think you said the riparian area, those rules take precedence. So ultimately, how far, how much can we shrink the wildfire DPA, and what determines whether we can shrink it or you actually have to build further away?
Through the chair, so I think this question pertains more to new development being created. The scenario that I presented was if we had an existing home adjacent to a water course that already exists. For new development, there's the requirement through the Environmental Protection Development Permit area to establish the SPIA, which is often smaller than the 30 meters. And that SPIA area, yes, what we're recommending is that new lots be created outside of the SPIA area. And then we would want to look for as much space between the SPIA boundary and the new development as possible, ideally 10 meters. Often our setbacks for residential are between 7 meters and 9 meters. So we're getting pretty close to the 10 meters already through our normal zoning bylaw setbacks. So staff are of the opinion that there won't be a big significant impact to the development potential for new developments.
Other questions? When we were doing readings, I asked whether there were scenarios in which the plantings on my property could impact my neighbors. So I don't think you can still plant fire-prone plants, but they have to be a certain distance from your home, and they have to be spaced in between deciduous trees. And then, so if I plant one near the back of a lot, but then my neighbor puts in a carriage house, or they have a carriage home, and then I put in a fire-prone tree, which is close. Do I have to just be farther away from my primary residence, or do I have to be far away from all buildings where people are living? Go ahead, Mr. Gunn. You're on mute.
Yeah, we discussed this internally, and our interpretation is that in practice, when we're applying these, we'll be applying them within the boundaries of a parcel, and so adjacent parcels would not end up encountering a challenge that you're discussing.
So it is possible.
Yeah.
Through the chair, what I would add though is that we're hoping to be extremely proactive in getting the messaging out to the community so that people are educated and would hopefully be concerned, have the knowledge and information to be considerate to their neighbors.
Thank you. All right, I will go to, not seeing any other hands from council, I'll go to our moderator. Ms. Murray, are there any hands?
Mayor Elliott, there is no one online waiting to speak.
Thank you. That's *3 for the public on the telephone, or going to the participant panel in WebEx and clicking on the hand icon if you do wish to speak. Council, any other questions on this? All right, I'll go back to the moderator. Is there anybody with their hand up? Ms. Murray, is there anybody with their hand up? I've lost her. There is it. Okay. If there are no further speakers, I would ask council if there's any other further information they need. Seeing none, now that I've heard from everyone on the speakers list, it's a requirement that I ask 3 times if there's anyone else who wishes to speak before we can close the public hearing. For the first time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? For the second time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? And for the third and final time, is there anyone else who wants to speak or make a submission? Seeing no further speakers, please note that council members are not permitted to receive any further submissions or hear either a proponent or opponent to an application once the public hearing has been concluded. So this means that we can't see you out in the community or receive emails or phone calls on any of these bylaws until a decision on the bylaws has been made. Any and all communication from this point must be channeled to staff. If there are no further speakers, I declare the hearing closed. Thank you very much for your submissions. Thank you, staff, for your submission. Okay. Let's keep going and we'll take a break around 7:30, council, if we need it. So next up, we have item 8A1, District of Squamish Procedure Bylaw. This is an amendment bylaw number 2838/2021 to bring our procedure bylaw into alignment with new provincial regulations on electronic meetings. And I will turn this over to Ms. Pollock.
I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you. My name is Charlene Pollock. I'm the manager of legislative services, and I'm here to speak to some amendments to the procedure bylaw. So the purpose of the amendments is to align with Bill 10, Municipal Affairs Statutes Amendment Act, which includes changes to the community charter and the Local Government Act around electronic meetings and adding in the ability to hold electronic public hearings. So changes to legislation. There's changes to the Community Charter and the Local Government Act, which came into force on September 29th. Ministerial Order M192 expired on September 28th. Since June 2020, local governments have been operating under Ministerial Order M192, which allows all meetings and public hearings to be conducted electronically. Local governments were directed to not bring forward changes to the procedure bylaw until amendments to the legislation were brought into force. Okay, so proposed amendments are outlined in the staff report. And the purpose of amendments related to electronic meetings and electronic participation by members of the public is to add flexibility and to increase accessibility to the public. We've been conducting meetings electronically since March 2020 and have found that meetings have run smoothly and that the public appreciates the ability to participate electronically. It opens the door to members of the public who are not able to attend in person. The ability for members of the public to attend in person or electronically is expected to increase public participation. So next steps, following first 3 readings of the bylaw, staff will advertise in 2 editions of the newspaper we will include information on the website, and staff will be available to answer any questions that the public may have. The bylaw will be brought forward for consideration of adoption following the notice requirements. And the electronic participation at council meetings policy will need to be amended and will be brought forward following adoption of the procedure bylaw so that it aligns with the bylaw. And a further review of the procedure bylaw and some staff recommendations items for discussion have been scheduled for a committee of the whole meeting on October 26th. A yearly review of the procedure bylaw is conducted and generally takes place at a committee of the whole meeting to allow greater discussion and deliberation. The amendments related to electronic council meetings and public participation were brought forward first due to the urgency with M192 expiring. And the staff recommendation is that District of Squamish Procedure Bylaw number 2099, 2009, Amendment Bylaw 2838, 2021 be given first 3 readings. And that's the end of my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Pollock. Council, are there any questions? Councilor Pettingill?
Thanks. 2 things. One, just so I'm clear, because this did confuse me a bit, and I think you addressed it, but the idea is that we quickly pass this so that we can continue without M192 as needed in the context of COVID still persisting a bit. But we will have a deeper discussion on October 26th, and presumably we might make further adjustments not too long after that. So there may be sort of 2 sets of updates coming, and this is just the kind of immediate one.
That is correct.
Okay, in that case, I'll save most of my comments and questions for the committee of the whole. The one thing, though, that I do have some concerns about, and I don't know if there's anything we can do, but in-person public attendance has sort of a natural protection in that it's not very feasible for people out of country or whatever to sort of overwhelm a public hearing. And so I don't think that this problem has ever existed before, but and so far we've been okay, but I just have a bit of anxiety over sort of unlimited public attendance at public hearings. Again, not wanting to restrict or discourage local participation, but thinking of, some massive project that's facing a public hearing, maybe an international based project, how we could or should manage that. And maybe that's something not to address tonight, but that is one piece that we are sort of formalizing that I do have some concerns about.
Ms. Arthurs?
Thank you. Can I clarify that question? Did you say you have concerns about international participants? Is that in a public hearing? Okay. So to be clear, the legislation does not define who has an interest in an application in a project. And so in the same way that we would not accept a letter, say for example, of somebody who was off seas or whatever, overseas, we would not limit participation electronically. We wouldn't have that ability because it's not available to us in the legislation to not receive written submissions.
Other questions on what's proposed? I have a question, Ms. Pollock. So when we mean electronic meetings, we mean electronic participation of council and the public, because we already live stream, so technically we are doing that part already.
So an electronic meeting is a meeting where council is meeting electronically. So a meeting such as today where council is meeting in person and members of the public may be participating in person or electronically, that is not an electronic meeting.
If Councillor Stoner had joined us this evening, would it have become and she was at home joining us, is that an electronic meeting?
No, because there is a separate section in the procedure bylaw that allows, I believe it's up to 3 members of council to participate electronically.
So in section 6.8, it says the mayor or the acting mayor determines that an electronic meeting is advisable and the number of members able to attend the meeting in person is insufficient to achieve quorum. So do you need both of those things to declare it? Because it says and quorum can't be met. Or is it just advisable sometimes to have an electronic meeting?
Well, the way the wording is right now, it would be a requirement, and we don't have we wouldn't have a quorum available to attend in person.
So if we get hit by another pandemic, and I think it's advisable that we all participate from home, I can do that.
Yes, that it is very similar wording that is in the current bylaw, which states if the mayor, or in the absence of the mayor, the acting mayor determines there's an emergency involving health, safety, or the environment, and the number of members able to attend the meeting in person is insufficient to achieve quorum. So that wording is very similar to what is currently in the bylaw.
And then we've also kept the rule that the member presiding at the meeting must not participate electronically. So if Councillor Race is chairing committee of the whole next week and he comes down with a cold on Monday, why wouldn't we allow him to preside from his computer, given that we can see each other on the screens?
If council wishes, that can be removed from the current bylaw, that wording.
I mean, we've shown it works because we did all of our meetings, someone presiding electronically from somewhere. And so, I mean, what we want to encourage is that if people are ill, they stay home. But I think a lot of times people don't want to give up their opportunity to chair their committee of the whole, that sort of thing. So I wouldn't want to, that was my reason for asking that question, Council, was, and I'm interested in your thoughts about that wording change. And Ms. Pollock, do you want us to save those changes for the 26th and just pass what's in front of us, or do you want us to make the amendments tonight?
I think it would make sense to make the amendments tonight. That's a pretty straightforward amendment to the bylaw.
Thank you. Council, other comments or questions? Council French, and then Councilor Firth, and then Councilor Race.
Just to speak to the feedback on having the ability to chair electronically, I certainly welcome that. And think that matches up with best practices. Keep everybody healthy when someone has symptoms that are not necessarily significant enough to prevent participation electronically. Thank you.
Councilor Herbert?
Thank you. I think that, yeah, I would agree that the ability to chair remotely should be, is something that we should include. I think that as we meet, we all have our roles during the meeting, proven that we can perform them effectively. And this bylaw sort of speaks to being able to participate in a non-chairing role, but I think we've shown that chairing can be successful remotely as well. So I'd like to see that be enabled here.
Councilor Rice.
Thank you. In my case, I'd probably make a mess of it if I was trying to chair it from home, but I'm happy with anybody else undertaking that. Actually, the reason I had my hand up was a question about electronic participation. Is it defined? I didn't see it unless it's in there. Does it, for example, include telephone alone, conference calling and things like that? Or is it just virtual as we're doing now?
Through the chair, so it would include similar to what we're doing right now. So electronic, whether it's through the electronic platform or via telephone.
So it could be it could be telephone alone without the video?
Yes, that's correct. We have that ability now. There's a phone number that is available for the public to connect. If they don't have a computer, they can phone.
Councilor Belinda.
Yeah, thanks. Allowing the chair to chair remotely is one of the items I had for the 26th, if not tonight, to adjust. But the other one in the same vein, from my perspective, is the limitation on 3 councillors remotely. That cap doesn't make sense to me at this point in time for similar reasons. I think we really want to encourage people who just got the sniffles stay home. And so I think that is one that I would think about removing tonight as well. If we're not going to do it on the 26th, and have one more item and either take care of it tonight or wait till the 26th.
So if we didn't have quorum, if more than 3 councillors wanted to participate electronically, then it would be an electronic meeting. And then that would be at the call of the mayor or the acting mayor.
So to clarify, I do have that ability. So if 4 councillors call and say they all caught a cold, I guess the flexibility, Ms. Pollock, is if that happens after the meeting notice has gone out. So between Thursday and Monday, the majority of council catches a cold. And then what option am I left with? And so again, this can be a conversation for the 26th. I know we just need to get something through tonight so that we're legit. But that is a question I have.
I think if that were to happen, we could amend the agenda to, because we are required to state on the agenda cover sheet and on the website that a meeting is being held electronically. So as long as there was enough notice for staff to do that, then that would be possible.
Councilor Herper?
I'm just curious what enough notice is. From Thursday to, I understand it's somewhere in between the Thursday to Tuesday. Is it 6 hours? Is it Sunday night? What roughly?
We do have a requirement that the agenda is posted 24 hours prior. It's posted well before that on the Thursday, but you know, I think if we knew by 24 hours in advance, then we would be able to do that.
Okay, I have a minor wording change for section 11, which is petitions and delegations. But council, if you don't want to entertain tonight, you don't have to. We can talk about it on the 26th, but the delegation shall advise the corporate officer in writing prior to noon on the Tuesday preceding the council meeting the names of those wishing to speak to council, the subject matter to be discussed, whether they're not they'll participate in person or electronically, and then the next bullet point. it is helpful for our staff to know if someone is coming into the building or needs to be connected online so that we can get them ready to go. So if people feel that's a minor amendment, I'm happy to put that forward tonight. If people feel that that is something they want to talk about on the 26th, I'm happy to table. Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
I wonder whether this might be able to be addressed through the application form process as an alternative, just a notion.
Ms. Arthurs?
We can put it on the application, their indication of how they want to participate, but if we should set that down as a procedure in the procedure bylaw.
Councillor Begill.
So this is one, maybe it is better just for the 26th, but to let staff know, I really appreciate the consent agenda and I like having the correspondence at the end, but in my mind, I was wondering about a second consent agenda near the start with where we approve the minutes, and in particular the resolutions coming out of committee of the whole meetings. I find myself sometimes we go through our agenda, we do some work, and then we get to the committee of the whole where we approve the resolution to do that work that we just already done. So it's like out of order. It's not a huge deal. It's just kind of like a weird out of order thing. And so if that sort of could be its own committee of consent agenda at the start and get those ones sort of done and signed off before we actually get to that business later on in the agenda.
All right, let's table that for the 26th because I think we should, as a council, walk through the whole procedure bylaw and make sure that it still makes sense to us, the order in which we've got things, because different councils do them differently. And so that some councils put notice of motion at the end, so it doesn't derail council if there's a notice of motion, all those sorts of things. Now that you've been using this procedure bylaw for a while, I think we can table that for the 26th. All right, so any other minor changes on the electronic portion of this? So I do want to move it with that change in section 11 and also removing the line about, I've lost it now. It was in
6.82.
6.82A. The member presiding at the meeting must not participate electronically. I would like to remove that. So I'll move this with those two amendments and table the rest of the conversation for the 26th. Seconded by Councilor Rees. Any other comments? I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Let's take a 5-minute break, but just so that staff that are up next are clear, and when we get to the permissive tax exemption bylaws, we'll be doing the golf course one last because we have members in conflict. All right, so we'll be back at 7:30. Okay, thank you everyone for allowing council a bit of a stretch break. We are now on item 8A2, District of Squamish fees and charges bylaw. This is amendment bylaw number 2836, 2021 with regard to our recreation fees. And I believe I'm turning this over to Ms. Guest. Wait for it.
Any minute now.
Okay, we can see your presentation and now we can hear you.
You can hear me, Council. Thank you. Good evening, Council. My name is Devin Guest and I'm the Acting Director of Recreation Services here at the District of Squamish. The objective of being here tonight is to present the proposed amendments that reflect the current operation and align with the new software that Recreation Services that align with the new software to the recreation services schedules in the fees and charges bylaw number 2012-2007 for council's approval. Stand by for slide advancement.
The anticipation is really, it's building up here. Ms. Gibbs?
Palpable.
Yes.
Thank you. For consideration, staff table the following resolution, that council approve the following resolution, that the District of Squamish Fees and Charges Bylaw number 2012-2007 amendment, bylaw number 2836, 2021 be given first of 3 readings. As background for those watching, recreation management software was in need of replacing. Under the TTP umbrella, COVID presented an opportunity to do just that. 2020 saw the selection of vendor Perfect Mind as the new rec management software. Since then, staff have been working on configuring the software since the beginning of March and are getting ready to implement to staff and community. The administrative changes required in front of council are there to optimize new and updating processes with technical functionality of the Perfect Mind software. The summary of changes are as follows. Schedule 14.6, cancellation and refund fees, are simplified and amended to improve clarity with the addition of a consistent withdrawal fee for customer-initiated program cancellations. Schedule 14.7, park facility rentals. There is an addition of an hourly rental category for the grass/gravel sports fields for greater service. Addition of a special event category to accommodate one-off small events that use the fields outside of traditional use. Part of the new system integration is updating the fees and charges bylaw, which include removal of outdated rates, renumbering within the schedule for continuity, Schedule 14.2, the aquatic center rentals. For greater clarity, the ratio of lifeguards to participants for school age groups. The removal of outdated items from the schedule for clarity from 14.3, 14.7, and Schedule 17. Schedule 14.6 under cancellations and refunds fees. Multiple visit drop-in passes currently have no expiration date. With the implementation of the new REC system, the importance of having passes expire has been identified. The 2-year expiration date from the date of purchase is now established. Schedule 14.7, park facility rentals. Clarified the use of grass fields for residents, non-residents / commercial and school group use. The addition of pickleball to the tennis courts under commercial use for community amenities, as well as adding a special event fee for local nonprofits for the use of Centennial Field. That should read an added special event fee category. Schedule 17, the 55 Activity Center, where a lounge and the cafe area were renamed, and there is a correction of an administrative error that removed section 9 through 12 of Schedule 17 and added back to those schedules. The implications to the bylaw have no budgetary implications, no policy or further bylaw implications, and overall present a positive organizational impact. Beyond the positive organizational impact, staff are very excited to bring greater service and greater userability to our community. Like the ability to create their own login and password, which may seem simple, but has previously been unavailable. Printable receipts. Families and caregivers will be able to see at a glance scheduling of all of their family's activities, as well as increased usability and efficiency between user groups and our bookings department, which both are very excited about. Given the bylaw amendment is administrative, the engagement under the IAP2 is set at Inform. I would like to stress that the community will not be affected by these changes beyond improvements to clarity and interpretation. So in summary, staff are excited and optimistic about the onboarding of new recreation management software, which is preparing for rollout shortly to staff users and then to the community for fall registration. These bylaw amendments will increase that service opportunity to customers and community alike. Staff put forth the following resolution for council consideration, and I'm available now to take questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Guest. Councilor Race.
Thank you. Just question about the pickleball to the tennis courts commercial use. Is there a commercial rate being applied to that, or is it the same rate that everybody would pay? What's the word commercial?
Yes, so previously the tennis courts have a commercial rate for those commercial entities coming into town looking to set up their own tennis camps or just operate in a general commercial environment. And so given the onboarding of the new pickleball amenity, that same category has been applied. Nothing has changed for community groups or community members having kind of everyday intended use.
Thank you.
Councilor Anderson.
Last year, a community group applied to use the Pointe Park shed. And I'm looking at the parks facility rentals, and I'm wondering whether consideration has been given to include that facility in the list as we have it in front of us. I know there is an insurance requirement, but I wasn't sure about a rental fee. Is that a facility that might come under consideration in this program?
Through Mayor, it could be something that we could contemplate onboarding in future. The position of staff right now is that that is in partnership with our Squamish Nation community partners, and that shed is, the intent around it is really for Squamish Nation use.
Thank you.
Councilor Pettengill.
Yeah, a couple questions. The one, I see fees like $7.03 and $3.38. And I like round numbers, and I'm wondering if there's a reason why we have those very specific fees.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Pettengill. Through Mayor, taxes. And we have taken this bylaw quite a ways in terms of cleaning it up, but there is still room for greater consistency in how we lay out our fees, net versus gross. And that's likely to come in later years, but it has to do obviously with applicable taxes and any relevant surcharges that we may apply. Because we too like round numbers, especially when inputting them into new pieces of technology.
Okay, thank you. And then I don't know if I've missed it in previous years, but I saw a section on advertising fees. I thought we were still waiting for a sponsorship policy document and so on. So I'm wondering how that aligns and you know what policy then we have in place about what advertising we're accepting.
Through Mayor, advertising and sponsorship are categorized as two different marketing sectors, bodies. And so the advertising rates set forth in the fees and charges have been there for quite some time, and they are advertising. So they're their sales of advertising assets that previously the district has identified as saleable, and so reside outside of any previous presentations to council around scoping of a sponsorship policy.
Okay, I guess I'll leave it as a comment for now, but in my mind, the issues I have and concerns around sponsorship are what we're referring to as advertising here too. It's the same thing. It's you know, do we want a local vape company or tobacco or fossil fuel or alcohol? And I know there's all kinds of different perspectives on these things, but whether it's a sponsorship or advertising, I think it's a similar bucket of issues that I certainly have thoughts about. So I'll just leave that there for now. But yeah, that one's maybe something we can come back to at some point. And I would like to see in the sponsorship discussion. The last thing is the seniors, the activity 55. Is there still seniors drop-in time available? And I see you can book certain spots. If it's not booked, do seniors have drop-in access? And are there blocks of time where we just proactively block them aside for seniors drop-in access?
May I clarify what I think your question is, Councillor?
Yes, you may.
Are seniors allowed to come in and drop in for a coffee with a group of like-minded citizens ad hoc at any given time? Yes. Yes, that seniors, youth, children and families, that is, you know, part of the informal programming structure of recreation services is certainly to welcome community in all shapes and forms into our community facilities.
Okay, thank you. And that was part of it. And I know there's a group that's discussing some other changes we may want to make going forward. I can't remember what we've titled it, so I don't want to presume outcomes there. But in the interim, for example, the Fireside Lounge, is that an area where we may have set aside blocks of time where, you know, seniors are guaranteed that no one has booked it at that particular time, and so there are sort of blocks where they know they can go there?
In short, yes, that is. We foresee that as being one of the outcomes and from the steering group. Although I would like to position it more as a think tank after hearing from previous presenters. I do believe that that previously had existed already, both within Burnham Park and the 55 Activity Center.
So let's remember, Council, that we're talking about a fees and charges bylaw and that all of this information is coming to us about space and space utilization. That's not what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about aligning the fees and charges bylaw to our new recreation system. So we're not making decisions about space utilization tonight. That conversation is coming. So this is about fees and charges, but not times of day. Am I correct, Ms. Glende?
Yes, you're correct, Mayor Elliott. Thank you.
Do you have a follow-up?
No, I just, when I saw the fees and charges, it sort of implied to me or suggested that this was sort of 100% bookable all the time. I thought that's what it was implying, and so that wasn't my understanding. I wanted to kind of understand what the current picture is, at least, and knowing that the steering committee still has recommendations coming forward.
Councilor French?
Thank you, Mayor. There is a term that is new to me in this report, in tandem fees. And I think maybe that might have something to do with music royalties, possibly. Could we just get an understanding of what that is?
Yes. Some may be familiar with SOCAN fees, Society of Composers and Musicians. And so in tandem is the new SOCAN.
And follow up, just noting that school groups will have free access to the outdoor fields during school hours. And I'm wondering, is the idea here that that is just a free-for-all, or are you hoping that there would be some level of organization here and classroom schools would actually book that free time so that there is some level of organization around who's using fields when during the day?
Through Chair, this is formalizing an already in place process of field bookings and coordination between teachers, school board, and our bookings department.
Great, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Guest, I was curious, the program refund private lessons, section 14.6, it says you must still withdraw 72 hours prior to the start of the first class. Have we made exceptions during COVID to our cancellation policies? And shouldn't we hold these over?
Thank you for your question. We have indeed made exceptions, and we certainly have relaxed. As we see, as we respond to the COVID environment and the ever-changing PHOs that recreation is susceptible to, we continue to be fluid to meet the needs of our community and while still offering safe programs and services. So we absolutely have postponed, delayed, and waived fees.
Right. Do you have that discretion already, or is that something we would need to formalize in our fees and charges bylaw?
Council, it's my understanding that council passed a motion. I do not have that exact date and motion available to me, but I am happy to come back to council with that information and a little bit more context to where the authority resides.
All right, thank you. And then the next section under specialty programs, day, week, camps, refund. It says to receive a full refund, the registration must withdraw in person or by calling 5 calendar days. But with the new system, can't that be done online?
Thank you for asking the question. It will be able to be done online, something that staff are very excited to be able to offer the community about.
And again, because family life changes sometimes and it's unpredictable, does it need to be 5 days now? Because we've got a more robust system here and the wait lists, and I'm curious about the 5 days remaining the same as before, given our new capabilities.
Yes, and I myself asked my staff that exact question, and we looked at other municipalities across the Lower Mainland, and we also looked at programs where wait lists exist, and the ability for people to withdraw and still take up space. And so for programs that are high demand and high wait lists, such as gymnastics, the 5 calendar days seems to be a fair and equitable time for staff to be able to respond and refill the class should we have one or more people drop out.
All right, so our fancy new software doesn't automatically notice a cancellation and ping the first person on the wait list. That's still manual.
That's still manual, correct.
All right, any other questions, council? Would someone like to move the recommendation to give first 3 readings to the fees and charges amendment bylaw 2838? Nope, sorry, 2836. Moved by Councillor French. Seconded by Councillor Herford. Any further comments? I'll just add, you know, when I sat on the library board, I raised the issue of library fines and getting rid of those so that there isn't a sort of barrier to participation in borrowing books. And I wonder if there's a time and a place to start looking at, you know, how do we simplify our systems now that we've got new software so that we're not going back to the same where people feel like they can't counsel if they're sick. You know, how do we not go back to the status quo? How do we look again at our cancellation policies and make sure that, you know, we're not dinging people unnecessarily for just being good citizens? And so it's just something for us to think about when we're considering all of our fees and charges. Now that we've got new systems in place, is can we simplify things for staff? Can we simplify it for the public? And can we make it less punitive so it's not a barrier to participation for those that want to do the right thing or need more flexibility because our lives get complicated? So just a comment for future discussion.
Thank you, Mayor.
Not seeing any other hands, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so now we are on to permissive tax exemptions. These have been separated out. I don't believe there's a lengthy presentation for any, Ms. Belinda.
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. Given that staff provided the detailed presentation about the permissive tax exemption applications at the last committee of the whole, and members of the public can view that on our archive or read the report, today our staff is just providing an update on anything that's changed for council's information.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can everybody hear me okay?
Well, we can. Is this your first time presenting to council?
Yes, correct.
Yes, welcome. And yes, please introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Philippa Rees-Whitehead. I'm a financial services specialist. I'm here to introduce the 2022 permissive tax exemption bylaws for council's consideration, which would exempt certain properties from property taxes as allowed in section 224 of the community charter. There are 5 bylaws which were discussed at the committee of the whole on the 28th of September. Council and the viewing public can read the detailed report and view this online. At the committee of the whole, council directed staff to make one change to the bylaw regarding Squamish Senior Citizens Home Society. We have drafted a 50% partial PTE, which is presented in bylaw 2867. Please note, there is also a movement in the PTE value for the Squamish Senior Citizens Home Society following the committee of the whole meeting last week. Due to checking in on the construction phase, we have spoken with BC Assessment to confirm this number, and the value has been revised from 8,000 to 26,403. So based on a 50% partial PTE, the estimated annual PTE value would then be 13,201. The estimated total value of the PTEs in the 5 bylaws presented this evening is approximately 204,000. Council must also give notice for these bylaws, and the first notice is due to be in the Chief this Thursday the 7th and the following Thursday the 14th of October. The first bylaw 2859 includes the Squamish Helping Hand Society and Sea to Sky Community Services Society for 1 year. Bylaw 2860 includes the Federation of Mountain Clubs of BC and Nature's Trust of BC for 3 years. Bylaw 2863 for the Sea to Sky Montessori Society for 1 year. Bylaw 2867 for the Squamish Senior Citizens Home Society for 1 year. And finally, bylaw 2861 for the Squamish Valley Golf Club for 1 year.
Thank you, Council. Any final questions on any of these PTEs before we vote, remembering that 2 of our councilors are in conflict on the last one? Okay. I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm just going to go in the order that they're presented. Does someone want to move first 3 readings of the permissive tax exemption bylaw for Helping Hands and Sea to Sky Community Services, number 2859/2021? Moved by Council Ray, second by Council Pettengill. Any comments? I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up, permissive tax exemption for 3 years for the Federation of Canadian Mountain. What am I trying to say? Federation
Of Mountain Clubs of BC.
Yeah, FMC and Nature's Trust. Thank you. Be given first 3 readings. Moved by Council French, second by Council Herford. Any comments? Call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. District of Squamish permissive tax exemption for the Sea to Sky Montessori Society. This is a partial exemption for 1 year, number 2863/2021. Moved by Council Herford. I'll second that. Any comments? Call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. And then permissive tax exemption bylaw 2867/2021 for the Squamish Senior Citizens Home Society. Moved by Councilor Anderson, seconded by Councilor Herford. Any comments? Call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. We have 2 members that need to declare for the next one. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. I wish to declare conflict on this item about Squamish Valley Golf and Country Club. I'm a member of the curling club, and membership fees can be affected by the outcome of the permissive tax exemption application. Thank you.
Councilor Race.
Thank you. And I'm a member of the Squamish Squash Club, once again, part of the same tax-paying entity, and my fees are subject to, among other things, this tax exemption.
All right, Council. So for permissive tax exemption bylaw number 2861/2021 for the Squamish Valley Golf and Country Club. Be given first 2 readings. Moved by Councilor Herford, second by Councilor French. Any comments? Call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Reese Whitehead. Nice to see you in council.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Okay, so we're on to item 8B1. This is contemplation of second reading and setting a public hearing date for zoning bylaw amendment bylaw for 38108 Cleveland Avenue, bylaw number 2657/2028. And I'm turning it over to Ms. Hamilton.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to get my presentation up. All right, can you see the screen here? Okay.
We can just need to put it in present, like it's in presentation mode, but we can see your next slide. So it's, what do they need to click? Share, duplicate screen. At the in display settings at the top there, you just click on that and just duplicate slide. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you for the technical support. All right, so good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Carrie Hamilton. I'm a planner with Community Planning Department, and I'm presenting to you today bylaw number 2657/2018 for 38108 Cleveland Avenue for second reading and council review. The rezoning is located at 38108 Cleveland Avenue and is proposing to rezone from the existing C2 vehicle fueling station site to C4 downtown commercial. The property is surrounded by C4 properties with the exception of CD 51 to the east, known as the Mistral Building. The property falls under DPA 3 Universal Guidelines and DPA 5 Commercial Center. This rezoning application has had several zoning and design iterations along the review process, resulting in several different design and massing orientations. So far, the project was presented at an advisory design panel, ADP meeting on October 2019, a committee of the whole in May of 2020, and was given first reading in September of 2020. The next few slides will review the changes made to this mixed-use building from first reading to second reading. The development at first reading was proposing a 5-story building massing with a 6-story indoor and outdoor amenity space. This revised mixed-use development is now only proposing a 5-story building with a 3rd-story indoor and outdoor amenity space overlooking the Cleveland-Winnipeg intersection. The building has now reduced the number of residential units from 28 to 26 and has increased the employment space percentage from 20% to 30%. These changes have allowed for the upper story massing to change considerably since first reading. One of the major changes is the reduction in massing at the Winnipeg and Cleveland corner. Removing the residential space from this area helps to break up the building's original box look and helps to open up the corner plaza area. The 5th story, as highlighted in the red in this image, is also stepped back with a change to its facade to help break up the upper story massing even further. The building's roofline has also been significantly altered with a combination of flat roof and 2 prominent gable roof designs, which are in keeping with other newly supported building designs in Squamish. At first reading, there were a number of questions and concerns from council around the 2nd story commercial area. The 2nd story was designed as an upper story patio area, and comments were that the area seemed disconnected with concerns around elevator access. The new development proposal has redesigned the 2nd story patio and replaced it with 2nd story office space. At first reading, council also expressed concern for the 20% employment space proposal and conveyed that employment space should meet the 30% target in the C4 zone. The current proposal now meets this target, and this includes a total of 769 meters squared of enclosed commercial floor area to achieve that full 30%. And in addition, it also includes 149 meters squared of patio space at the corner of Loggers Lane and Winnipeg Street as an addition. The applicant has agreed to reserve a portion of the commercial space at the street level for food and beverage uses to facilitate integration with the pedestrian realm on Cleveland and Winnipeg. These uses will be secured in a land development agreement for the property prior to adoption. Throughout the numerous design changes of this development, the architect has explored different building heights between 5 and 6 stories and widths to find a balance between the massing for this development and the development's density targets of 2.0 FAR. As a result, the C4 step back has been challenging for this development to accommodate. At first reading, council directed this development to meet all the C4 regulation. It's important to note that this proposal still requires a step back variance to the C4 regulation. However, it is only necessary for the 11-meter section of the building frontage, as seen in this yellow section on this slide, which makes up about 30% of the Cleveland frontage. At first reading, council expressed concern for the building's lack of Squamish character and color. One of the unique elements of downtown Squamish are the colored awnings that line most of the street frontage from Pemberton Avenue to Victoria Avenue. Existing awnings on Cleveland are made from canvas or metal, and some images can be seen on the slide. This rezoning is proposing to continue the metal awning look at the ground floor while also using the awnings to incorporate color into both the streetscape and the building itself. Note that all colors and materials and general form and character are still very preliminary and will be reviewed in more detail at the time of development permit. This includes the north wall, which currently shows as a mostly public art, and more work to this facade will be required at development permit. At first reading, council also asked for more detail regarding the 16-meter frontage requirement, and the final materials and colors are to be reviewed at development permit. However, this image shows the ability that this 36-meter frontage can be broken up into 4 different sections to meet this regulation. Lastly, at first reading, council also expressed concern for singular changes to the Cleveland-Winnipeg intersection, and that an overall design should be considered prior to approving a final streetscape corner for this development. As a result, district staff have engaged a streetscape consultant to create a cohesive intersection design for all 4 corners of this intersection. Streetscape improvements will be secured in the land development agreement, and this development will be required to contribute to the cost of creating that frontage design, cost of that consultant. To better understand this development's massing on the streetscape, the next few slides will show viewscapes of the proposed development on current mountain viewscapes. This viewscape shows how the variance to the step back of the upper story on Long Cleveland Avenue does not hinder the view of Mount Garibaldi, both from the west and the east side of the sidewalk. Generally, no major mountain viewscapes can be preserved with the massing above 2 stories from this particular viewscape angle. You can see the mountain line is in green and the existing building lines are in white. This viewscape shows that mountain views can still be seen from the street level entrance to from the Memquem Dike pathway area. And lastly, this viewscape demonstrates the extent of the building's coverage of the Chief Mountain Range from this viewscape. So the development is proposing a CAC in line with the current CAC policy under option B for multifamily residential or mixed use. The total of the contribution is $327,310. This contribution has decreased by roughly $50,000 from first reading proposal, as it reflects the reduction in residential density on the project from first reading. For council priorities, the application is now proposing to meet the C4 zone requirement of 30% of employment space and is proposing more ground floor retail space in line with the employment study needs, thus meeting council's objective of economy and local jobs. The addition of a corner plaza and new intersection design for all 4 corners will significantly enhance the public realm of this prominent downtown intersection and will set a high public space precedent for future developments on Cleveland, meeting council's priority for enhanced public spaces. The project was posted to an online public information meeting platform in August of 2021, and notice was sent in the local newspaper to inform the public of this public information meeting. 2 comments were received on the official public information meeting site, and 5 were received through Development Showcase, and can be all of those comments can be found in your attachment 6 to this report. Changes to front canopies have been made to reflect some of the public's comments that were received. Should the application proceed, a public hearing will be held and notification to the public sent out as per Local Government Act requirements. So council's recommendation or staff's recommendation to council is that the District of Squamish give second reading to Amendment Bylaw 38108 Cleveland, number 2657, 2018, and as amended by removing the following section in the bylaw that spoke to the 20% employment section, as this clause is no longer needed. And that public hearing date be scheduled for December 14th, 2021. Alternatively, council can choose to defeat the resolution for second reading and direct planning to revisit the C4 zone for Cleveland Avenue. Thank you. At this time, I welcome any comments or questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Council, any questions? Councilor Anderson?
Thank you. I gather that the color, the topic of the last council discussion, is in large part delivered in the awnings and placement and design of the awnings. The condition and maintenance of awnings on Cleveland Avenue has been an issue in the past with uneven maintenance. And my question is, has the durability and maintenance of these awnings been considered? What type of material is being proposed? Because they can deteriorate in weather over time and do require periodic maintenance. Is this a consideration that has been addressed with the development proponent? That's my first question.
Through you, Mayor. No, we have not gone into that detail, as we typically do that at development permit when we review the material choices. At this time, we're just proposing that they're metal and proposing what the design could look like, but we don't typically get into those details. But it could be a very good question to ask at development permit.
Thank you. If I may, Mayor, I have another second question. I note the letter from Squamish Terminals of August 20th expressing concern regarding, in general, safety concerns for the truck route on Loggers Lane. I also note that the advisory design panel discussion of this project back on October 17th, 2019, also discussed the future of Loggers Lane. And I'll just quote a staff providing orientation to that meeting stated that there is not yet a defined vision for this corridor, and that is likely true. That was 2019, and it's likely still true. My question is, how has this concern been taken into account, traffic safety, truck route safety, in the design and intended functions of the Loggers Lane frontage of the building? Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, it's a very good question, and it was something that we did look at in the early stages, and it was another question that just came up recently in the comments section. And with this development, it is a bit unique where the setback off of Loggers Lane is quite large, and that's due to the right-of-way that there's a sanitary line in the rear of that property off the Loggers Lane side. And that setback allows for the building to be pushed back off the road quite significantly, which would allow for vehicles to come out of the building and have a safe resting space before proceeding into the road, which addresses sightline issues coming onto that road. So at this time, it has not been flagged by engineering as an issue or concern, and it could be looked at in more detail at the time of at the proper road design, which would be at servicing agreement.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councilor Pettingill?
Yeah, a couple. I'm wondering if staff can clarify, it was mentioned consultant will help with a street corner study to make sure the whole intersection functions well. Can staff comment on the timing of that in relation to an ability to react and make changes to this if adjustments need to be made to this corner of the intersection?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. The timeline at this time is to create a design and have a concept ready by the land development agreement, but that the exact details of, say, the bench details or the landscaping details would be something that would be more appropriate to review at development permit when we review the landscaping. So we would have a preliminary design to show council prior to adoption is the timeline currently.
Okay, thank you. And then it's noted in the C4 zoning requires, I guess, greater setbacks. So the gabled roof structures are into that setback area. With the resolution as proposed, are we saying at this point that's okay, or a variance still has to come forward, or can you speak to that, please?
Yes, through you, Mayor, it's a good question. Yes, this would require at development permit that the applicant have to apply for a variance in order for this design to proceed. It's not something that would be addressed in the rezoning.
So if I look at it looks, even though it's only impacting the gabled roof structure, those are pretty fundamental to the design we're seeing. So if we elected not to approve that variance at that time, I guess they'd have a C4 zoning, but really no building that was provable in theory.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, the rezoning process is to support the transition of this lot from C2 to C4. And at this time, council would be approving to transition this to C4, noting that this building design as it's proposed may not meet all of that regulation. And that can be addressed at development permit.
Mr. Val, in this case, it's my understanding that the C4 zone requires the setbacks all the way up on that angle. So I'm not sure how this meets the C4 zoning if that's not there. So perhaps you could clarify. I think that's where Council Pettengill and I are a bit confused.
If I may, through you, Mayor, what the applicants are proposing, I believe, is a much greater setback at the intersection of Cleveland and Winnipeg. And so they're proposing, a bigger setback at the intersection where the massing of the building impact on the public realm may be more significant. And they're proposing a projection into the setback on the further up Cleveland. However, I think what Kerry has said is, this is a preliminary design. This will have to go through the ADP process once again before it goes to a development permit. And the building massing might change, so the applicants might end up not requiring that variance. This is a preliminary design. But what the applicants are proposing is that they're offsetting that setback at the intersection, so they require a bigger setback on the north end of Cleveland.
So just following that logic, though, if council granted the C4, which is attached to CACs, or this understanding of CACs, and then we decide we're actually not okay with the variance, so then there needs to be a significant building redesign, then those CACs we have in mind now may not be applicable anymore because you might not fit the same number of units. Is that correct?
Well, I think that the proposal could change if council didn't want to grant the variance. For, let's say, the massing could shift towards the intersection.
Okay, just the last thing then on a different topic. I believe I've asked before, and I can't remember. I thought there was investigation, at least some commitment on emissions levels at the building and energy systems, and I didn't see anything in this report. So I'm just wondering, are there any commitments in terms of not just step code, but building energy and emissions?
Through you, Mayor, we have received an outline of some of those details, but we did not receive it in time for this council meeting to provide it for council. And from my understanding at this time, they are proposing to secure only electric energy sources from what I can recall from this application.
Councilor Herford?
Thank you. In this proposal, we see a percentage gain in employment space. Is it a net gain? The percentage goes up when the residential units go down. I just wasn't sure on the actual square footage or square meters or whatever the employment space.
Through you, Mayor, yes, the percentage is reflective of the whole building. So when the residential unit square footage goes down, then the requirement for square footage for commercial would also go down to achieve a similar percentage. I could look at the old development to confirm exactly the difference of square meters. I don't have it at the top of my head right now, but you are correct in that observation.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the percentage of the development. In my rough math, I had the net sort of staying the same, even though the percentage increased. And I just wanted to, it'd be great to have that number and have that suspicion confirmed. It'd be great. Thank you.
Ms. Hamilton, when you were showing the images of the viewscapes, there was one on the east side of Cleveland looking up towards Inchkai, and the gabled structure that's wanting the variance seemed to be blocking that view. But I think you said you could see it from both sides of Cleveland. You could see the mountain. Could you just clarify for me?
Certainly. I'm just going to share my screen, make sure we're speaking of the same viewscape. Is it this particular viewscape you're speaking to?
The east side there?
Yeah. So to speak to the east side, I know the image is a little small. You can actually, Garibaldi is right here. And currently an existing building already impacts that view, but the point of what I was speaking to is that this particular building does not impact that view. That's clear.
And what if you're standing on the corner of Cleveland and Winnipeg on the east side?
Right here. So, something we are trying to work to create is a viewscape study in order to ensure where we actually take these viewscapes from, what are the most effective areas to take them from. Sometimes when you take them right in front of a building, they almost always block some view because it's right in front of you. But we typically do try to take them from a little further down the street just to show the overall impact to the streetscape. So that's been our precedent moving forward, but we are trying to create a better precedent for where these key areas are and establishing them to make sure that we are preserving those particular viewscapes. We could come back with viewscapes from particular corners if council has certain requests of particular prominent spots at this time for this particular development.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just hard to see from that picture. But anyway, that aside, the alternate resolution, so we're either giving it second reading and scheduling a public hearing, or we're defeating second and then looking at the whole C4 zone potentially. So I'm wondering if you or Mr. Valeneskis wants to comment on that alternate resolution, because it seems out of character versus sending it back to staff, or just defeating it. So I think the part that intrigues me is the C4 getting sent to committee of the whole.
Mr. Valeneskis, do you want to try to speak to that, or?
Sure. Through Mayor. So we've worked quite a bit with this particular application on achieving the requirements of the C4 zone, even though, in some respects, like the setback, it's not achieving it. But I think what staff are saying is that we've had this application for a while. We've gone back and forth with council comments with the applicant and with staff comments. And so, in order to, if this is not something that council wants to see on this particular property or on a property that's zone C4, maybe we need to revisit the C4 zone in general terms, which is not a project that we currently have on the books for the near future. Yeah, that's essentially the gist of that alternative recommendation.
Thank you. Council, any other questions at this point? I've got Councillor Anderson and then Councillor Pega.
A couple of brief comments at this time. They're not especially zoning issues, but issues certainly of interest to the public.
Can you wait until we have a motion on the floor before you get to comments?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks. Council Peckingo.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to wrap my head a little bit around. I wonder if staff can comment, is there a fundamental difference between the CD37 and the C4? And I guess what I'm just trying to understand is, if we're thinking about sending this back because there needs to be a discussion about C4, I'm sort of wondering about why. And the reason I picked CD37 is on the same side of the street, so sharing similar views and so on. And that seemed to find a solution. We have on the other side of the street C4 buildings that have gone forward, and it seems to have worked. So I'm just wondering if staff, is there something fundamental to the C4 in this location that causes an issue that CD37 avoided, or the other buildings in C4 have somehow, it's not an issue?
Through you, Mayor, could I just clarify, when you're speaking to CD37, are you referring to 38123 Cleveland Avenue?
I'm referring to, I think it's the development across from the brew pub.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, typically we would, we use CD zones for unique properties and special properties. CD37 was a complete block with multiple different building heights and different deliverables. It was compared to C4 as a base. However, we usually use those CD zones to encompass kind of these unique properties. We see 381018 as something that probably isn't unique and should meet the C4 zone and comply to the rest of Cleveland Avenue. And we have worked hard with the applicant to have this building comply to the C4 regulation, with the exception of that step back regulation. And I think we discussed this at first reading as well, that this is one of the first applications on Cleveland with that new step back regulation. And it could be that it may not be well suited for this area, or that it does cause challenges. At this point, we don't, this is our first application to explore that. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an overview as to why we're still pursuing C4 for this site.
I can just add to what Carrie said. The CD37, it's kind of, it's on the edge of the downtown core, I would say, versus the Winnipeg Cleveland intersection. It's surrounded by a sea of C4, so it's really where these smaller lots with the downtown core zoning exist. So I think there's a bit of a geographic difference between the two.
All right, any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. So there is the staff recommendation and also the alternate recommendation. And so is council's pleasure. Not seeing hands, so I would like to propose the alternate resolution, which is to defeat second reading and send C4 to committee of the whole. Councilor Race, are you seconding that?
Yes, if I understand the procedure, we are essentially moving second reading, and then we'll vote accordingly. And I'll second that.
That's correct. We have to move second reading, and then the staff recommendation is to defeat it. Okay, so the reason why, and then I'll come to you, Councilor Race. I'm proposing this is that, to me, this This lot does have its challenges, and I recognize the efforts of staff and the proponent in trying to create a massing that works here. But this will be a very important corner, and we've acknowledged that by putting in some work to design that intersection to make it create a real focus on the public realm. But I'm worried that C4, you know, when we put in the setbacks, it was really to, I think, in my mind, help us control the massing and create a gentler, less imposing feel on Cleveland, while still providing for additional residential, additional commercial, and support the vibrancy that we want downtown. But when I look at what the massing starts to look like by attaining C4 on a small lot with constraints, it's not what fits there to me. I don't like the fact that we would be, you know, moving forward with a rezoning that already has a variance on the setback that would only be decided later on. You know, the fact that we can't at rezoning be shown a massing that meets the intent of this zone is a bit frustrating, certainly, I'm sure, for the proponent, but also for us. And we've certainly had feedback on C4 buildings. I realize this is one of the first to try and achieve the setbacks on upper floors. So that's difficult for me, but I don't think this is the massing that to me should be reflected at that intersection. I think it's also missing some of the key details on the environmental and climate related piece here. So for that reason, I think it needs a rethink. It might be better as a CD zone. It might be better with a C4 zoning that's shifted slightly. I don't think we're achieving our goals through the C4 zoning on this particular lot. Councilor Race.
Thank you. And I will also not be supporting second reading. I have similar concerns to the mayor with respect to massing, and I can recall expressing concern about the massing. Well, I think it was back in one of the earlier discussions, perhaps at first reading. And changes have been made to the building and things have been shifted around. But it still just leaves me in a similar position to the mayor as just being too much building on too small a piece of property. And I don't think this is a problem created by the proponent as much as I think it's a problem of the C4 zoning. And that's why I think the referral back to staff to review the C4 zoning is appropriate in this case. I look at this building and it's at an intersection, and I walked by and stood around that intersection just a little while ago and looked. This is the first building on that intersection to come to redevelopment. But there are four corners. This will be the first. Eventually, all of those other sites are in my view, ripe for redevelopment, probably within the next 10 years. And so this is going to set the precedent for that intersection. And that intersection to me is arguably one of the most significant in our downtown area. It is geographically different from developments farther south. And it is more or less surrounded by small lots at the moment. So I think it is distinguishable from decisions we've made down near the Brew Pub, for example, in Vancouver Street. But I think we have to look at that in the context of there could be four of these buildings. And is this what we want at that particular intersection over time? The two problems, I guess part of it's subjective, but trying to be specific. The setback on Cleveland is one issue that concerns me. The other is the setback from the side street. And I can remember somewhere back in my first election campaign saying one of the things that I really want to promote is sort of setbacks on the sides. So we try to preserve as much as possible as of the view corridors over towards the blind channel, the Chief, and all of the mountains to the east and west of us. And so it almost strikes me that we need a sort of a C4 zone for corner lots and a C4 zone for mid block lots. They have perhaps slightly different needs and characteristics that might help that problem. So I think it is a massing problem. There's just, in this case, there's just too much building. It juts into both the Cleveland Avenue setback, which we've already codified, but also the intersection, the side street setback, which I think is something important to consider. So as a result, I will be voting against this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Herford and then Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. On first pass, one of the last times we looked at this project, I distinctly remember saying that it just feels like too much. And when I saw the renderings this time, there's nothing there that said to me, "Oh, well, that looks that looks much better." It looked somehow, even though the unit count dropped, it still looked like just too much happening there. I do think that looking at the C4 zone, so that we don't get this outcome when every time an applicant comes forward, I think is a good course of action. Whether for this particular project we end up with a CD zone or something specific for these corner lots that do have the potential to really define the character of our town, particularly on that block of Cleveland and that particular intersection with all four corners developing. I think that some additional work can be done there, and so I won't be supporting the second reading, and I look forward to the work on these items.
Councillor Anderson and then Councillor French.
Thank you. The fate of this lot and of viewscapes and building heights were matters addressed by a previous council. I'm in favor of sending the C4 zone to a committee of the whole forum for review. The outcome that we have here, the presentation of the building in its current presentation, it's reflective of numerous evolving demands and expectations of councils, advisory design panel recommendations, and the public. And this has been a challenge, no doubt, for all involved. I believe that the diversity and complexity of the facades and the color scheme will actually benefit the downtown environment, would benefit the downtown environment. I think that we need to, I think a net positive, but that again, the design is reflective of all sorts of demands. I think that the proponent has made real conscientious effort, and I think this should be recognized. However, I am in favor of the review of the C4 zone, this coming back for discussion, and also in its application to the site. And I'm not in favor of proceeding to second reading at this time. I'd like to address two other issues. One that has not been discussed yet is construction strategy. We're in a very, the center of town, if you like, with very busy transportation corridors. And although not an issue for zoning, I think that we need to address construction strategy with developer and with nearby developers in future. This developer, this project proponent, happens to have a good deal of experience and skills in off-site construction methods. And I think that this could be any project in this vicinity could be quite disruptive to the downtown for a lengthy period of time. So I think it is quite relevant to discuss construction strategy and to look at the opportunity, in fact, that this developer brings with a background in off-site construction methods. Finally, I wish to also address a couple of comments in the report to council. There is under the economy and local jobs section under council priority areas, reference to the recent employment land study. In fact, there have been 4 recent employment lands studies. 2015, the Employment Lands Strategy Study, 2020, 2021, 2 reports this year. And I think that these are all presenting important information for council's consideration and for staff. And I think that they are of such importance that we need to work together with the Economic Development Department and decide how we're going to refer to them. Because in fact, the Employment Land Study was 2015, and the one that is likely referred to here is another type and study with a distinct purpose. So I think this is important information. We're talking about commercial space, employment space, jobs, downtown, smart growth, and each of these reports has something different to offer, different questions to pose. So just note that we need to be precise about which report we're referring to, and perhaps we can have some help from the Economic Development Department on this. A small issue, but I just wish to note it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor French.
Thank you, Mayor. This building has been through a significant evolutionary process, which I think is appropriate for development at this corner. And of all the configurations we've seen so far, I think this one is the best. And having said that, it has significant flaws. I want to support second reading and sending it to a public hearing, although I feel at this point that we're just not there. We need to put more work into this lot, and in taking this step, I think we're sending a message that our downtown development standards are high, and that's as it should be. And I'll thank the developer in advance for their patience as we work through this. Thank you.
Councillor Belinda.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to support second reading at this time either. I think it is a struggle. I see us struggling to express what we want to some degree, and to, I think the renderings we've seen, even though it's not, it's at later stages where some of the details we're concerned about, I think, get worked out. It's hard to sort of move out of our comfort zone when we're not seeing something that sort of immediately grabs us. And I think for me that piece is still missing. And I think it doesn't, it is a concern that it doesn't fit the C4 zoning even. And so, I think some work needs to be there. I'm not really prepared based on what I've seen here to move beyond the C4 and just go with this. And I think also would prefer before moving further to see the intersection plan and the 4-corner analysis. We've talked about that before, and for me, understanding that is fairly critical. And I would like to see the admissions piece nailed down early rather than later. So I will be one of my colleagues on this one.
Thank you, Council. So I'll call the question on second reading. Any opposed? Councillor Race, Herford, Pettingill, Mayor Elliott, Councillor French, Councillor Anderson, opposed, motion fails. And then on the next item, refer this C4 to future committee of the whole for discussion. Moved by Councillor Race, second by Councillor Herford. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. We can contemplate third reading this evening of the official community plan amendment bylaw for wildfire development permit area 2809-2021. Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Herford. Any further comments on this? Councillor French.
Thank you, Mayor. The long-term reality of the Lytton fire this summer is setting in, if it hasn't already, for pretty much everyone. And that situation underscores the importance of this DPA in our community. This is an important step in protecting our town from wildfire in the future. I support third reading. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Herford.
Thank you. I'll be supporting this motion. I've had the opportunity to see firsthand the impacts of the wildfires throughout the province, and I think it's our responsibility to prepare our community for the changes that are coming. And even this summer, on the backside of Cloudburst Mountain, we had a wildfire that was luckily contained and didn't damage any structures, but I think the threat to our community is real, and it's on the horizon. So I think it's appropriate action. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Race, and then Council Anderson.
Thank you. I actually had occasion to drive through Lytton on Saturday, and the only word I can get to describe that is the word frightening. Anybody that doesn't see the need for this type of bylaw should do the same thing and just drive through there. It is really quite an astonishing thing that's happened. So what we have to do going forward as a community is we have to make our community more resilient to that kind of an occurrence. I think the only thing that is certain is that those types of threats are not decreasing, they are increasing, and we have to make our community more robust. I think the emphasis that staff have commented on putting it on education first before we get too far into enforcement is quite appropriate. I know in my own personal case, once I knew some of my plants were problems, it was a simple process to just take them away and start making my existing home a little bit more resilient. And I've still got work to do on that. But I think that we certainly have to apply it to new construction, particularly on the fringes of the community. But infill construction, all the trees we have in the middle of our community, I think that it also is appropriate in the middle of our community as well. So I certainly will be supporting this. I think it is, we have to do this now. Thank you.
Councilor Anderson.
Thank you. I will be supporting this, the recommended bylaw approach, and I wish to applaud staff's emphasis on education first and on voluntary compliance. We've had a number of concerns expressed in community discussions and also by letter. We have an example here in our package. And I think that these have been, for me, I'm satisfied with how they're addressed. I think that an integrated approach to realizing our objectives will probably evolve and may need to incorporate other elements that haven't really come to discussion. The landscaping maintenance guide, or the landscaping best practices guide, or I haven't got the title handy, I think is a wonderful product, and perhaps in future, and we're not alone as a community in facing this, similar products could be developed to address cladding and roofing materials and the choices available to builders and consumers. The integrated approach to realizing objectives at this time, staff have highlighted Fire Smart workshops and community chipper days. I'd like to emphasize something else, and that is yard waste programs to help residents with removing yard waste. Right now, the peak times for maintenance of landscaping maintenance, well, they are in November and late winter, early spring. And this is precisely when our schedule for yard waste collection is reduced. And so I just wanted to emphasize that part of that integrated approach is going to evolve, and we may need to address our yard waste collection to be more than what it is right now, is emphasizing wild safe considerations to also emphasize fire smart considerations. We can also be working with community partners in new ways, including the garden club and local businesses. But I applaud staff's approach with that integrated approach and education being emphasized. Thank you.
And then Mesi, Council first. Okay, Council Belinda, do you want to speak? Oh, you did. Okay.
I will be supporting this. I love the smell of cedar and the feel of cedar. Grew up in a cedar log home, and so I certainly understand the affection that some people have for cedar. But I saw a project that students did in the whole SB 48. I think it was 2 years ago now, and so thinking about that and what was reinforced in the staff project. And then for all summer long, as part of being an alternate on the SLRD board, just seeing the constant alerts about evacuations and understanding the stress. It's not just Lytton, it's all throughout the province. It just really reinforced how unfortunately important this is, and hopefully this will help us move towards a bit more safety for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be supporting third reading. I think it's important to prepare our community, and we are in a changing climate, and you know, a good portion of this regional district was under a lot of stress for the majority of the summer. And you know, what we want to be able to do over the coming years is build our community's confidence that we've done everything possible to prepare for the inevitability that we'll end up with a wildfire on our doorstep. And what I love about the DPA is especially attention paid to the subdivision process, so that we create the barrier right from the beginning, that we are thinking about roads and we're thinking about evacuation routes from the outset, from the moment where we're designing these new. And I think that's so important. I think one of the things that is still missing from this bylaw and also the landscaping piece is the notion of equity, and that not everyone can afford to hire a QEP to look at the riparian area behind their house and make suggestions. Not everyone can replace their landscaping. And so I think when we look at grants that are coming from the provincial government around supporting innovative ways to fire smart the community, we need to start to think about how we can use these. I know Lillooet is received grants to do fire smart assessments for individuals over the age of 65, and then make recommendations to them, and then come and do the work. And so they just received grant funding to do that. And I think that's where we need to go for our community, is to help them do this work in any way we can for those who don't have the disposable income. So, you know, this is a great start. I think I asked this question early on, where does this put us in terms of leading the province? And it's putting us near the forefront. I think it's a great example. And I look forward to seeing, you know, our new homes be built in a more resilient way. It'll give us all a little bit more peace of mind going forward. So thank you, staff, for the great work and the educational materials that are coming with this amendment. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. We're going to take another 5-minute recess. So we'll come back at 9 o'clock. Okay, welcome back. I realize it is 9 o'clock, but we are getting close to the end. So we're on item 9A1, District of Squamish Temporary Patio and Sidewalk Sale Program. And we are turning it over to, Ms. Woodside.
Good evening. I'm just going to share my screen. All right. Can everyone hear me okay? And can you see my screen?
You just need to put it in presentation mode.
Thank you. Okay. Hello, Mayor and Council. I'm Alicia Woodside, and I work as Economic Development Specialist here at the District of Squamish. Today, I'm joined by Nav Gill, who's our Portfolio Administrator, and Carrie Hamilton again, our Planner. And together, we're presenting a review of the Sidewalk and Streetscape Program, otherwise known as Temporary Patio and Sidewalk Sale Program, including options for evolving the program. So as a quick refresher, this program was launched in May 2020, and it was with the intent of supporting businesses through COVID-19 recovery. The program was carefully designed to support business recovery, community connectedness, and physical distancing throughout the community. As part of the program, staff created a new temporary expedited patio permit, whereby food service businesses or retail businesses could obtain a permit to quickly erect a temporary patio or sidewalk sales area. The idea was that businesses could quickly get a temporary outdoor area set up to expand their service area outside using simple materials like picnic tables, tents, and other temporary concepts. Given the temporary nature of the program, the application and review process was extremely lightweight, with most applications being approved by staff within a few days. Being temporary in nature, the program is set to expire on October 31st of this year. And just as a quick review, the program has seen great uptake throughout Squamish since its launch. Staff have reviewed and approved 20 temporary patios to date, and these patios have been available to serve throughout the entire community, with locations across downtown, Valleycliff, Brackendale, Garibaldi Estates, and the North Yards neighborhoods. Local businesses and organizations have provided very positive feedback about the program, specifically around the flexibility that was offered to them in a very trying time. The objective of today's presentation is twofold. The first is to discuss the conditional extension of the temporary patio program. So this past summer on June 15, BC's Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch announced that they will be extending their temporary license program from October 31st of this year until June 1st of 2022. The intent of this change was to help provide temporary patios across the province with the time that they need to secure long-term patio licenses from municipalities and the permits that would be required with that, should they wish to keep these patios long-term. A key point to this new policy is that the extension will only apply to those businesses that already had a temporary patio authorization before the original deadline of October 31st. And to view the policy, please view attachment 1 of the staff report. Currently, the 20 temporary patios across the district are set to expire on this upcoming October 31st. Staff recommend supporting the direction of this new policy directive from the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch, which is designed to provide those patios with the time they need to transform them into a longer-term offering. Staff propose offering a conditional extension to all temporary patio permit holders, which would allow them a special extension to continue operating their temporary patio until June 1st, 2022, under the condition that they apply to become a regular patio before October 31st, 2021. This extension will encourage temporary patios to seek compliance with the requirements of the regular outdoor program, and we'll be discussing that program in the upcoming slides. For those businesses who choose not to pursue that route, they would be required to dismantle their patio by the original deadline of October 31st. And as I mentioned, this would only apply to existing temporary patio in line with the new regulation from the Liquor Board. The second objective of today's presentation is to look ahead at the longer-term future of patios in Squamish with a review of the regular outdoor patio program and a discussion of proposed next steps. For this part, I'm going to hand it off to Nav and Carrie. So first to Nav Gill.
Thanks, Alicia. So for context, the district has had an outdoor patio program that's been in place well before the pandemic, with the process being slightly different depending on whether a business was applying for a patio on private land or on district land. So for district land, a business could apply to build a sidewalk cafe or a parking stall patio, and that would be an application through Real Estate Services. And the business would be issued up to a 3-year license agreement, and there was no fees associated with this process. In contrast, on private land, a business would be applying through the planning department for a delegated development permit, and that permit does have some fees associated with it. So both of these processes required review from various district departments as well as some external agencies. And because of the two different processes, it kind of complicated things, and the application process could sometimes get complicated for both staff and businesses. Next slide, Alicia. So we wanted to go over some of the key advantages that we've learned as we've implemented this temporary program, as well as advantages of the regular program that we had in place. So the temporary program kind of eased some of the challenges we had with the regular patio program by creating one website with one application, regardless of whether it was on district or patio, or sorry, the patio was on district or private land. The application listed all the requirements needed, and the business just had to submit the one application, and then it was a collaborative review process with staff. Well, meanwhile, the regular outdoor patio program does have more rigorous requirements for design, safety, and building code, which is important given that these patios are intended to be operated on for a longer term basis. So the temporary patio program did highlight some inefficiencies to our regular patio program, and the district could learn from this process. And so we've kind of taken the advantages of both programs, and we would like to create a more streamlined, efficient, and revised patio program going forward. So in order to do this, we will require some bylaw changes that will come back to council, and so that will be presented at a future council meeting. So just to show an example, on the left side is one of the expedited temporary patios that were approved, and then on the right side is a patio that was approved through the regular patio program. So just to show you that there are like big differences between the form and character on those, just to highlight that. And now I'll turn it over to Carrie to go over next steps.
So proposed next steps. Firstly, staff are proposing to extend the current temporary program until June 1st, 2022 to support the intention of the new Liquor Board Policy Directive. This will also allow for current patio operators the chance to continue operations until they can take the necessary steps to upgrade their patios to conform with the regular program requirements. Following this, staff propose to return to council to discuss a new streamlined regular patio program, which would offer one application stream for both the on-street and off-street patio types. It would consider amendments needed for off-street parking regulations. It would explore a harmonized fee structure for all patios and consider any revisions needed to the downtown parking stall patios. Next slide. So to update the regular outdoor patio program, our engagement plan is, our staff are proposing engagement plan with members of the Squamish key business groups, including the Downtown Squamish Business Improvement Association, Squamish Chamber of Commerce, and Tourism Squamish to help guide and inform improvements to this district regular patio program going forward. In addition, staff plan to engage with all current patio operators to ensure their needs are considered. Next slide. So staff's recommendation to council is to approve the following, and that is that the district extend the temporary patio program to June 1st, 2022 for businesses with current temporary patios, with the condition on submitting a regular outdoor patio application by October 31st, 2021. And that staff streamline the current regular patio permitting process and present an improved regular patio program to council prior to that date of June 1st, 2022. And that concludes our presentation, and we welcome any comments or questions from council.
Thank you to the three of you. I've got Councillor Herford.
Thank you. I'm curious about the proposed timelines here. The end of October is coming at us quickly, and then we would like them to apply under the current regulation, but then we're also going to do work to streamline the application so it's easier to apply, but we're making them do it the old way when we have a system that we know is cumbersome and we're coming up with a new streamlined way. Doesn't quite sit right with me, and the date in the motion for the new streamlined way to come forward prior to the date of June, whatever it was, the expiration date. I don't feel like we're giving a lot of time for, first of all, it seems a little disjointed, and I don't feel like we're giving a lot of time for the applicants to respond. So we're less than 30 days away from the expiration of the existing policy, and the dates proposed in the motion seem right down to the wire again. So I want to make sure that we give room, first of all, room for the businesses to maneuver, as it's a challenging time to be doing business. And then, and so that's the first concept. And the other piece is making them apply under the current regulations when we're going to do work to make it easier to apply. So is there not something we can do to sort of line them up with the new process that will be more streamlined, rather than push a bunch through the sort of cumbersome process that we're trying to replace? Does this make sense? My question? Thank you.
Who wants to take that question?
Through you, Mayor, maybe I'll take a stab at it, and then they can, Nev and Alicia might have more to say. So we did anticipate that this is a quick turnaround, and we have actually given all of the patios notice about over a month ago now that this was coming to council for an extension, and to let all patio owners know that who would want to proceed with going into the regular outdoor patio program, that the things they need to consider in advance of that to get them prepared for that application. There are a number of municipalities that currently have these applications that are streamlined, that work for both off-street and on-street, and staff are proposing to implement something at this stage just for those businesses who do want to apply for permanency, to apply under kind of a standard form that way. And then we can, as we review the permanent program, we can allow these patios to continue to operate with no issues of operation, and we hope that we will bring this to council very soon to review in more detail, so that they can be issued permanent patios much prior to June 1st, 2022. It's just a buffer date for us at this point.
Ms. Glende, did you want to add something?
I would like to add something, because behind the scenes in preparation for this presentation, it took me and those of us approving the report a very long time to figure out the logistics of this. So I think it might be helpful if I can apply my layperson explanation. Staff jump in if I've got it wrong, and let's see if I can help. So in order for the current temporary patios to take advantage of the extended deadline that the liquor board has now enabled until June, they must come to us and apply to do so. So that's the case. In order to encourage, like for those patios that are not anticipating that they're going to go steps for a more permanent patio, which implies that you have to meet building code and accessibility and occupancy. As you can see from the pictures, the temporary patios are much less robust and create some challenges. The the regular patio application will not be approved by the end of October. The idea is that it would be approved by the end of June, so they can easily transition into a regular program. But this is helping them get through. This is a bridge to get them into the longer term process. The process will be improved, at which point the applications will be processed.
So when is
thumbs
this
up from Carrie there that I got that correct?
So just to follow up on Councilor Everett's question, when will we be ready with the new process? Ms. Woodside.
Through the chair, and just to kind of add on to the earlier answers by Carrie and Linda, essentially before June 1st, definitely for the new process, but we want to allow time for proper engagement. So ideally before the end of the year even would be great. We want to build on the momentum that we have. The key thing I would say about why would we not use a new process for these transitioning businesses that we're supporting, and there may be some bylaw changes required to do an optimal process that kind of we're envisioning building, and so it will take time to implement. There's no perfect time. It's just a matter of trying to implement the best program we can as soon as we can. And in the meantime, for these businesses that are transitioning, we're really willing to hold their hand through the process as staff. And Carrie and Nav have been doing that throughout the summer in the approvals and in the initial emails that were sent, just notifying businesses about the upcoming deadline and kind of about kind of our plans. And so, yeah, hopefully the staff support will help to kind of in that interim period.
Do you have a follow-up, Councilor Herford, before I go to Councilor Race? Okay, Councilor Race.
Well, and I think Ms. Glenda answered my question, because I think the application that has to be made before October 31st is just an application for the extension. Am I correct in saying that? So that's a fairly summary application. And the detail is between then and June.
Correct.
That'd be the correct, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Council Pettingill?
Just from my own understanding, does the Liquor Review Board and their requirements and so on only apply to businesses that are selling liquor on their patio or in their establishment? And so retail and just gelato without liquor is much easier and we can sort of have a freer process? Or is what we're talking about, it applies to everyone, liquor or not?
Through the mayor, I can speak to that one. Yeah, that's correct. So the ones that don't have liquor are an easier process, because it's kind of under the old regular program where we could issue the up to 3-year term. And so depending on the patio and if there's no liquor, it's a simpler process. Hopefully that answers your question.
So my question is this: we're going out to consultation with 3 organizations that represent business. What if they come back and say, yeah, we like it in all neighborhoods, but we only want 2 downtown? In the meantime, 5 downtown businesses have applied for a permanent patio. So isn't there a risk that we're going to get information after receiving and starting to process applications that change those applications?
So through your mayor, the application will not grant them to make upgrades to the patio or any changes. It'll just allow, at this point, it'll allow them to extend to keep using the patios until June 1st, which is something a number of the other municipalities have supported as in line with the liquor board. And this is to we are still in a pandemic and they are still trying to allow for flexibility for these businesses. At this point, what staff is proposing is that we do start reviewing how these patios transition to the outdoor patio program. And at that, what we're proposing is that staff will come back, we will present some of those details, we'll present the findings from the community, and it will be to council's discretion if they want to make the amendments to the bylaws that would be required to allow some of these patios to continue.
Okay, my last question is I think the provincial extension to June 1st, 2022 doesn't require people to apply for permanent patios, or does it?
Alicia, do you want to speak to that? I know you know that policy a bit better than I do.
I was just recording a note. Could you please repeat the question, Mayor Elliott?
Yeah, my understanding is that the provincial government extended the temporary patio program to June 1st, as long as the applicants had applied before October 31st. But their extension doesn't require them to apply for permanent patio status with the local government to achieve that extension. That's a rule we're putting in place.
Through you, the mayor, that's also my understanding. I can confirm and get back to you. Essentially, it was written in the directive that it's the intent of the policy to help them become permanent, and that it's up to the municipalities to then further that change if they would like to. But it was really just a temporary extension with that goal in mind.
So I recognize we're going into the wetter months of the year, but we are still in a pandemic. So if I'm a business and I want to keep my temporary patio until next June, but by then I feel confident that my indoor capacity would be back to normal, there'll be less restrictions, and I don't want a permanent patio, but I do want my temporary patio until June 1st when I really, really have to take it down. Why are we limiting those businesses if we don't have to?
So some of the challenges of the patios program right now is that the different public health orders have changed over time, and we are seeing that restaurants are able to have higher indoor capacities and outdoor capacities. The intention of the temporary program was only to not allow any increase in occupancy. Whenever you increase occupancy, it triggers the need for building code and safety issues, fire exiting issues, capacity of washrooms, kitchens, and that hasn't been reviewed. So there is a bit of a concern at this point that as the directions have, with the directions from public health allowing more indoor dining and outdoor dining, that we might be exceeding our temporary status for these patios. And that we should be trying to seek compliance with these patios so that we can ensure everything is built properly and meets the building code safety conditions. So that was one of the reasons and rationales. And then as well, we want to ensure that we are supporting businesses starting this process early on. We wouldn't want them to come close to May and then make an application and expect staff to turn around an approval within a month so that they can keep their patio. So we did want to create this buffer period and use this time as an opportunity for staff to really work with the businesses, and businesses have a lot of time to make the appropriate upgrades, as some of them do require increased washroom capacity, which is not a simple shift and a change for them to do. So we wanted to give them that time frame that was realistic so that we wouldn't have to come back to council and extend this further and keep kind of going down this extension route.
Yeah, I guess my question though is, if we could always say you need to apply by October 31st if you intend on keeping your patio. I'm just not certain why then I have to dismantle, given we don't have a crystal ball for the winter months and where public health orders might go. And that's why I was trying to distinguish between our rules versus the provincial rules, because I think the way that I read the order, they have the extension until June 1st. Yes, Ms.
If I may, through the chair, just to add on to Carrie's points there, and this is actually something that Carrie's probably better to speak to, but it's actually in the OCP where there's some guidance around temporary structures. And I think it is limited to 1 year. And because of the special circumstances during the pandemic, we were able to extend patios but we're kind of coming to a point now where it has been 2 years. And at some point we need to find compliance with that policy from the OCP.
I understand all the reasons to regularize fees. I'm just not sure why we are imposing more if the province is okay extending these till June 1st, whether they've applied for a permanent application or not, why would we step in front of the province on that? I guess that's what I'm wrestling with my head. But I will go to my colleagues to see if there's other questions. Ms. Gill?
I think it's my understanding that that even with the province, they need to apply by October 31st, 2021 to make it a permanent patio. So we're kind of going with the same regulation so that they all have to apply to get that extension to June 1st, and then anyone that doesn't apply by October 31st doesn't get that extension. So not sure if that clarification kind of helps.
Councilor Bengal.
Yeah, I just want to. Mike, it wasn't on. Oh.
Sorry about that. It sounds like there's been some uncertainty about what the province requires. And I guess if the province doesn't require businesses to apply by October 31st, my inclination is if they want to extend, they have it until June 1st. We'll give them notice a couple more times and they can just apply for the new process when it's ready. That won't work if the province is absolutely requiring us to requiring them to apply to regularize now. So I think that clear understanding is important. Are we certain about that yet, or is there a way we can get confirmation on that before we proceed?
I'm just reading the order now.
Through the mayor, there is in attachment 1, the last paragraph kind of goes over that. So I don't know if someone's able to pull up the council report on there.
Now, the way I read this is that it's to give us time, and all it says is they must remain in compliance with local bylaws and requirements and all other requirements relating to the TESA. But it doesn't require them to apply by October 31st. They must have applied for the temporary patio by October 31st, but not for a permanent one. Councilor Race?
Yeah, that's what I thought, is that there has to be an application for an extension, which is what. Well, but we're not talking about temporary patios. We're talking about ultimately a permanent patio. That happens in June.
Can I speak?
Right.
With respect? So the provincial letter is about the temporary expanded service areas. And their letter says that the GM will not be able to accept new TESA applications after October 31st, implying that people can still apply through this program for a temporary patio until October 31st. So that's what I'm saying is we definitely want to have time and give these people time, but I'm not sure why we're asking people to dismantle, because the province is giving everyone till June 1st to operate. But we can start to change our regulations. We can start to put people through a process. We can ask for not a permanent one to apply by a certain date. My question is, why are we asking everyone who doesn't apply to dismantle when it gets support through another winter and spring?
Yeah, if I can maybe speak, I think that's a good comment. And if that's a concern of this council, then we can certainly remove that condition that they have to dismantle it and that they can continue to operate until June. What this policy doesn't speak to, and what we've spoken to this branch in the government around this, is that municipalities are supposed to create their own programs to how to support this as well. And we have reached out to other municipalities. So what staff was trying to do is to suggest a process that other municipalities have taken on. Some have done a complete extension, and others have taken this process of requiring an application in order to proceed. So if council's concerned with that, we can certainly change it so that all patios can continue under the temporary program, and maybe we still stay with the existing proposal, which was for if you do want to become permanent, then to apply by October 31st. It may lose some of the incentive, but from what we've already done with our initial review of these patios, is that a number of them do want to become permanent, and they are eager to comply. So I don't think it'll be an issue.
Thank you for that additional clarity, Ms. Hamilton. And I think the incentive is if you don't apply by October 31, your application will not be processed in time to meet the June 1 deadline. And that is the incentive. So it's just, I don't want to cut off other businesses who need that helping hand to get through to the spring, but believe that because of the size of their establishment, or that they're just trying to get to a place where they can just get back to normal versus having to put in extra bathrooms or go to these extraordinary measures. So that's all I was thinking. Is I think you're spot on with creating the deadline. I'm not sure we needed to dismantle things in advance of June 1. All right, with that clarity, council, any other questions? Councilor Kerr.
Thank you. The dismantling piece I read in the report, but it isn't really captured in the motion here. So is there I'm just curious about the wording that we're actually discussing. To me, the staff recommendation as worded here doesn't speak to dismantling. It's just a paragraph in the report. Is that how everyone else would see it?
Yeah, so through you, Mayor, I'm just looking at it myself, and I think the intention of the motion is that it would be an extension with a condition that you apply. And so we would have to probably break out that motion to remove that condition and just say extend all patios, and we can deal with that on an internal. Maybe we can deal with the October 31st deadline to apply for permanent as a recommendation more than anything. It's not really a condition anymore for extension.
But we want to put the condition on their application being processed. So what we could do is say that the district extend the temporary patio program to June 1, 2022 for businesses with current temporary patios, that businesses that wish to go through the regular outdoor patio application must apply by October 31st, 2021 to have their application processed in time for June 1, 2022. And that staff streamline the current regular patio permitting process and present an improved regular patio program to council prior to June 1, 2022. You want to move that?
I'll move the first piece and have a date change on the second piece. I think having the new program in place for June 1 is important, but to come back to council before June 1st doesn't really have us making whatever regulatory changes need to be made or anything else. So I think April 1st for it to come back at a minimum. Although I hear staff telling us that it could be back prior to Christmas, but I want to make sure we really, I'm sensitive to the accelerated timelines to make sure everyone understands what's to be expected.
Staff, are you okay with that date change? On the third, that statement?
Yeah, this is for the second motion for the streamlined regular permanent process.
Yeah, to present an improved regular patio program to council prior to April 1st, 2022.
Yeah, I believe that's our intention. So we can start for that date change.
I'll move both of those. Or is it all three now with the wording? I will move all three.
Is there a second? No, seconded by Council. Any other comments? Knew we could extend this meeting. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you. I'm pleased to see that the recommended future presentation to council on an improved program will address parking stalls and presumably including some impact on parking stalls, their availability. When the initiative was introduced, I recall that the total number of available parking stalls in the downtown area was referenced in the report to council, but not the impacts in the immediate vicinity of the post office and what we call our high street. I think that a more nuanced consideration of parking impacts and, if you like, cumulative impacts would be welcomed by the public, by downtown businesses, and I look forward to that that discussion included in the presentation that we can expect in future. Otherwise, I'm in support of this recommendation as we have it. Thank you.
Councilor French.
Thanks, Mayor. Speaking in favor of the motion, there's a small part of me that hopes some of the downtown food outlet operators with patios currently operating or taking up parking spots choose to let their permits lapse so we can regain those downtown street parking sites. There's a delicate balance here, though, with the benefits of the patio program for downtown vibrancy and food industry survival as COVID-19 remains a threat and remains real. So despite that parking consideration, I do support this motion. Thank you.
I will call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, Council, we're on to item 10, consent agenda. If there's anything in which you're in conflict in the consent agenda or that you want pulled, let me know. Councilor Anderson.
I'd like to pull item number 7, the Dave Caldwell letter, the shelters. Thank you.
Anything else, Council? All right. Does someone want to move the consent agenda? Moved by Councilor French, second by Councilor Anderson. Any opposed? Motion carries. For under correspondence, we're on item 12. We have an email from Jay Sandy regarding electric vehicle charging stations, that this be referred to staff. I'll move that. Seconded by Councilor French. Any opposed? Motion carries. And one from D. Reiser regarding transit to and from Valley Cliff, and this be referred to staff because the bus times don't line up with the bell times. By Councilor French. Seconded by Councilor Herford. Opposed? Motion carries. Councilor Anderson, please go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Caldwell's letter regarding the structures in our public realms in different parts of town. It addresses a few issues: the purposes of the structures, the materials and labor costs, the placement of them, and it also points to recent social media discussion. I wish to move that this letter be referred to staff. And it's not my intention that we suggest staff should be replying to the letter, but rather my interest is, or suggestion is, that the letter will be of interest for project communications in future and perhaps for project planning. I wish also to take the opportunity to note that the installation of the covered structure on Cleveland between Winnipeg and Heberton, that's highlighted by Mr. Caldwell, while it will enable new opportunities for use of this public realm, it also has removed an earlier public realm feature, namely the Lions Club chessboard. And this has been brought to my attention by Lions Club volunteers. And the original chess pieces, which were there at one time, may well be in storage somewhere in a district facility nobody seems to know. I just wanted to note that it has been brought to my attention as a matter of concern by Lions Club volunteers. Thank you. So my motion is to refer this to staff.
Just more specifically, refer to staff for information.
Yes, Mayor Elliott, that is my intention.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor French. Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 13, we have recommendations from Committee of the Whole from September 28th. This is all in regards to the permissive tax exemptions, except for the golf course, which two members are in conflict on.
Well, I wonder if it's necessary to even pass that motion, given we've already passed.
Ms. Arthurs, what do we need to do here? And to Councillor Pettingill's argument that maybe we should move the consent agenda up in our procedure bylaw.
Procedurally, it's moved.
I can just pass over this.
It does close the loop, but it procedurally, it's moved because we've already given 3 readings to the bylaws themselves.
Oh, I know. Okay.
Hold on. Let's close the loop. That we get bylaw out to FMC and Nature's Trust. To bring forward FMC and Nature's Trust, Helping Hands, Steve Sky Community Services, Squamish Senior Citizens Home Society, and Sea Sky Montessori Society. I'll move that. Seconded by Councillor Pettingill. Any opposed? Motion carries. We're going to say goodnight to Councillors Race and Henderson. They're going to declare. Okay, so we'll skip over that last one. The District of Squamish endorsed the Adventure Center revitalization approach as presented September 20th. Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Herford. Any opposed? Motion carries. Going back to the PTE for the Golf and Country Club. Councillor Race.
I'm just going to step out because I've got to dismantle everything here, so I'll just go next time. Same conflict.
Councillor Anderson.
Mayor Elliott, I'm in conflict on this matter as I'm a member of the curling club whose fees are maybe impacted. Thank you. So I'll be stepping out.
Okay, it is moved by Councillor Herford, second by Councillor French, that we bring forward the Golf and Country Club PTE. Any opposed? Motion carries. We have no other business except a motion to terminate. Moved by Councillor Herford, seconded by Councillor French. Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you to all of our staff and to council for making us finish before we had to have a motion to extend. It's really lovely working with all of you. Good night.